lot of our alumni from all over the world right now joining us, and they'll be going over their match process and what they did, how they did it, and if you have any questions, please try and save that for the very end. We'll go through your questions at the end of our talk. Before we start, I just want to thank Dr. Fahim from the alumni group for giving us this platform so we could organize this. And I want to thank Fatima too for helping put all of this together. So we have all of our alumni. Thank you so much for taking the time out for doing this today and helping us understand this process. Congratulations, first of all. Yeah, we'll get started. We'll have the presentation running as we go along. And I first want to start with Manur Imran, who's going to be doing the introduction and kind of explaining how this process works. You're on.
Hi everyone, my name is Manur. I'm from batch graduate in 2015. I'm doing a prelim year in general surgery at Yale right now, and I matched into cardiothoracic surgery at the University of Pittsburgh. So I'm just going to be going over a little bit about some match statistics, what what specialties IMGs usually apply to, and then just some basic things that you need to know before you think about applying for the match. So lots of people matched this year into lots of different specialties, so that's great. Very happy for everybody.
Yay.
You go to the next slide. So some things to know before you're applying. So when you're preparing for your application, you need to have some stuff ready, but it kind of starts from your first year of med school. So if you know you want to go to the United States for residency, you need to start building your CV from like day one of med school. Things you need to do before you even apply are like take your steps, which you can do during med school or right after. Do electives, do sub-Is, do observerships, do research, all of which can be done in med school. We're going to talk a little bit about the application process, how ERAS actually works, what stuff you need to upload to ERAS, and then stuff about interviews, post-interview communication, what different kinds of visas mean, what you do if you don't match, and how to deal with red flags, and then a little bit about what this year might look like applying during like the COVID-19 pandemic. So some terms to know before you apply. What's an IMG and FMG? So that's pretty much every single one of us. It's an international medical graduate or a foreign medical graduate. So it's somebody who went to school outside the United States. A US IMG is a US citizen who studied outside the US. So these could be, they're most likely like people from the Caribbean schools, Dow International, any US citizen studying outside. But like Caribbean schools and some medical schools have this advantage that they send their medical students for all the clinical rotations to the US. So their last 2 years are spent in the US. So they're kind of considered a step above an IMG, even a US IMG who went to med school, suppose in Pakistan or Ziauddin. So a lot of programs favor them as opposed to an IMG who just did their entire education within their home country. A non-US IMG is any IMG that's not a US citizen, so a Pakistani. And AMG is an American medical graduate. Program director is a teaching physician who's in charge of the residency program, and they're responsible for making a lot of the decisions at the end. And the program coordinator is not a physician, it's the administrator or secretary of the residency program, and you communicate with them quite a bit throughout your residency and like during the match process. So what's a prelim program? It's a position that offers about 1 to 2 years of training. It's usually when you're entering into an advanced specialty program. So if you're doing neurology, radiology, anesthesiology, rad-onc, a lot of these, they require you to apply for a prelim position and your advanced placement at the same time. So you'll be required to do a prelim in either internal medicine or general surgery. And then the next year, you won't be applying for the match again, but you will automatically go to your second year spot in one of the programs that you did match in. But it's also something that a lot of IMGs end up doing if you're doing a more competitive specialty. So I'm going into surgery, and I did a prelim in general surgery because about like 80 to 90% of IMGs who want to do surgery end up doing a prelim year first, mostly because it's just more competitive. You just need to prove yourself more. You just need more US clinical experience, and a prelim is a good way of getting that. You will need to apply for the match like a regular recent graduate again the same year as your prelim year, so you'll be doing intern year and going through the match again, but it does greatly strengthen your application. A categorical program is one that offers a full residency training, so you'll come out board certified at the end of it. LORs are letters of recommendation. Calls refers to like interview calls. University programs are programs that are based in teaching hospitals, and they're affiliated with like a university. So where you want to go really depends on what your career goals are. If you want to be in an academic setting, if you want to participate in research, want to be a physician scientist, then a university program is what you'd be leaning towards. But things to remember is that university programs are often harder to get into and they're more competitive, and you just need to do more. It's not impossible, you just need to do more to build your CV for them. And community programs are residency programs that are based in private hospitals. Some community programs are affiliated with universities, so they're called university affiliated programs. So things to know before you go for the match: it's very expensive. You're basically hemorrhaging money from day one. You spend at least $10,000 in this whole process. Each step costs about $1,000. CS costs way more. And apparently this year they're conducting CS virtually online, and I'm pretty sure they're going to charge you the same amount. Step 3 costs money, but you also have to be in the US. So you have to account for the fact that you're going to spend $1,500 getting to the US and then back to take your step 3. ECFMG registration, all your study materials, your UWorld, your NBMEs, travel to and from for like electives, for research, for interviews is going to cost a lot of money. Your ticket costs like around $1 lakh at least. Application fees, so it depends on how many programs you apply to, but most of us apply to at least more than 100 programs. So you're going to be spending $3,000 to $4,000 on your application alone. And then traveling to interviews, staying at places for interviews. US clinical experience, a lot of people go through organizations such as AMO, which charge them $2,000, around that much. So it's an expensive process, but it is an investment into your future. But these are things to consider, because a lot of people need to start saving pretty early on, or need to let their family know that this is their plan in the long run. So based on the results of the 2020 main residency match, which is the one that we all matched in, the 5 most common specialties for non-US IMGs was internal medicine, family medicine, pediatrics, neurology, and pathology. And then match by specialty. So a lot of people think that family medicine or psych or neurology a lot of people apply to more than one specialty, which is completely okay. If you have multiple interests and your goal is to be in the US into your residency, you can apply to multiple specialties. But it's not easier to get into one specialty or the other. Each of them are completely different. You need to build your CV, cater to that specialty. And internal medicine has a pretty high match rate for US and non-US IMGs, about 24%. Family medicine is 8%, which is not a lot considering how we think about family medicine. We think it's easier to get into, but there are also fewer spots, which is why the match rate is lower. Pediatrics is about 11%, psych is about 6%, pathology is 38%, neurology is 26%, surgery categorical is around 5%, and surgery prelim is around 13%. So depending on which specialty you want to go into, you need to kind of cater your application towards that. So this is an NRMP survey from last year, and it was asking program directors what they do, what they look for when they're selecting applicants. So this is what they're going to do when they're calling you for an interview. So your step scores are pretty important. I mean, it's not your entire application, but it is a huge part of your application. But it's a good thing to remember that if you score poorly or average in one of your step scores, it does not mean that you're not going to match into your field of choice. It just means you can build up on some of the other things. And step 1, considering it's becoming going to just be pass-fail in like 2 years, then they're going to focus more on your step 2 score. So step scores, letters of recommendation in the specialty. So a lot of IMGs can't get electives in the specialty of choice. For me, I did one of my electives in med school in neuroradiology, and obviously didn't apply for that. But I used that letter, and I don't think it had as much weightage as one of my surgery letters, but you kind of have to make do with what you have. Your MSP, I think this matters more for American graduates and IMGs, but your goal is to stay in the top quartile of your class. It does matter how you perform in med school. If you did really well, if you got honors in a lot of subjects, people will be impressed with that. And they'll see like consistency in your application that you are working hard from the start. Your personal statement, highly recommend starting working on this months before, not a week before your application is due. I always procrastinate on this part and I always end up like rushing, but it's definitely something you can start working on it a year before you're even applying. Things that are important for us is personal prior knowledge of the applicants. So if you've done your electives in a place, if you've done observerships or research in a place, some doctor over there knows you, and that will help them pick you out of the pile. You could have the best application, but it won't matter if nobody ever gets to see it. So even if you're not applying to the hospital where you know people, people that know you will make calls for you. And then your visa status and then research kind of matters a little bit more for more competitive specialties, but it will help you in every specialty. And then things they look for when they're ranking you. So at this point, they've already taken out the people that they thought weren't good enough for their program. So now they're looking at your personality, how you interact with everybody, feedback from the residents, and then your step scores never leave you. That's it for me.
All right, thank you. All right, so next we're going to talk about the STEP timeline and how to kind of incorporate that into med school. So our speakers are going to be Farzam and Omer. We'll start with Farzam and then Omer can join in. I'll unmute both of you.
Hello guys, my name is Farzam Khokhar. I graduated in December 2018 and I matched into a categorical line position at the State University of New York at upstate New York. Today I'll be talking to you guys about an ideal STEP timeline. I would want to say that while the later parts of our conversations and even what we just had right now are more catered towards fourth year, final years, anyone beyond that who was going to apply in the coming cycle, my part of the conversation is more catered towards first, second, and third years. So if there are any of those listening to us right now, please try and pay extra attention if you can. So an ideal STEP timeline, what it should look like. Now, once again, this is not that everyone can follow. This is just something ideal. So based off of the Ziauddin curriculum and how our semester system works, our fifth semester comprises of it's CNS and micro. That is when I started studying for my steps. Your best strategy would be to cover those two huge chunks, which are very important for your step one exam as well, at the same time as the university is conducting those modules. So if you can cover CNS and micro during that time, sixth semester you would say is probably the lightest in all of your Ziauddin, in all 5 years of your Ziauddin career. So in your sixth semester, you can go full out with your step studies. You have a lot of free time. You have lectures spread out during the day. You can take that time to study in the library, all of that stuff. What this leads you to is an ideal scenario where you can possibly take step one sometime in the middle to end of fourth year. Like Mahanur just spoke about letter recommendations in the specialty, if you guys can see on the screen, on the left side of your screen, the second from the top is letter recommendations in the specialty. That has more weightage here. You can see an average rating of 4.2. That has more weightage over here than even your steps. So what I'm trying to convey to you guys is that that is something that is very highly highly looked at in your application, and that is something that we tend to ignore a lot during our time at med school. What I would say about that is that while if you don't have your steps taken, I think Ziauddin is a part of VSLO now, so you have those opportunities for your electives. Then you have all these external services like AMO and FMG and ACE-Med, all of these things. There's nothing wrong with them. However, if you have your steps taken on time, or if you can apply through VSLO, you go as maybe a sub-I or an acting intern. Those kind of experiences have a lot more weightage. The same thing that she spoke about, that in those experiences, you get to know the program director, the leading faculty at that specific hospital in that specific program. So even that almost always tends to get you an interview at that program at least. But even if you don't match at that program, it opens up a lot of doors for you in all other programs. So that's the importance of LORs. As much as it's overlooked at in Ziauddin, it's really important. And one more thing that I've heard from juniors is that people tend to apply for electives 3-4 months prior. You need to have a lead time of at least 8 to 10 months. So in the step timeline that I would say is ideal, if you have your step one done at least by mid to end of fourth year, you can utilize your elective breaks to go for some really kick-ass electives. for CS, while you go for your elective, CS is not, I wouldn't say it's a very easy exam. Some people do tend to think it's too easy. And I would say that there's this thing that I heard that it's easy to pass your CS, but it's very easy to fail your CS as well. So if you can just try and understand that, and while you're on your electives, you can probably take your CS then. So now if you're looking at mid of 5th year, you have your step 1 done, you have your CS done. CK is an exam that takes about 4 to 5 months for most people. Moving forward, the importance of your CK score might increase because step 1 is moving to pass fail. So applicants who are probably applying to the 23 cycle or anything after that, importance of CK might go up. Maybe that would translate into you putting in an extra month or 2, but that would still mean that right before graduation or a month or 2 after, you would be done with CK. What that also does is that you need to make sure that you do not have a lot of gaps in your application up till the time that you apply for your cycle. So even though graduating in December and applying to the cycle that's coming up in the September right after that, that's just 9 months. People tend to think that that's not a lot of time at all. I was asked in almost all my interviews, because I mean, every interview is just a casual conversation that they're having with you. Every conversation starts off with, so when did you finish med school? Oh, all right. So what have you been up to? You need to have some solid, you need to have a solid answer for that. That could be research. That could be a teaching position. That could be a postdoc. I'm sure people are going to talk about that further on in the conversation. But if you have your steps done right coming out of med school or during med school, you have those 9 months to really boost your CV. If you are conducting any research in a clinical setting, you're conducting any research in a hospital, that obviously gives you a solid 8 to 9 months to make a really good impression on the program director there and the faculty there. Even if not, and you just tend to do something for 3 to 4 months, that still shows that you have not just sat at home and studied for your exams all these 9 months. Because I mean, I'm not sure, I don't think that gives off a very good impression. So that would be about the step timeline. And yeah, just in the, if we can go back, to slide 10, I just wanted, if we can go back one slide. Yeah, so over here, I just want to talk about how even Manur said that being, no, one slide more, 10, slide 10. Okay, so even Manur slightly touched upon this, that you want to be in the top quartile of your class. This is over here somewhere. It is actually considered more important than awards of special honors and clerkships that has a rating of 3.6. Awards of special honors and clerkship in desired specialty, and right at the bottom, second last thing, you can see award of special honors in basic sciences. So while it is really important, I wouldn't take any importance away from that. It is really important to get decent or good grades throughout medical school. I assure you that if you're truly dedicated to your step 1 journey, basic sciences will not be extremely difficult for you. It will not be too much of a task for you to come in the top quartile of your class. When we send in our M.B.S for the match, our ranking in a class is not given a specific number. We have just 0 to 25, 25 to 50, 50 to 75, 75 to 100. That's what quartiles are. So as long as you end up in 0 to 25, you're good. That does not require a lot of effort. So if in case any first, second, third years have this fear right now that if we start the step journey, we will be compromising too much on our school curriculum, trust me, that is not the case. You will not be. And as long as you come out in the top quartile of your class, that's all that is needed off of you. So that is what I have to say about all of this. For now, you can go on to Omer, and if there's something that comes up later on in the Q&A, I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Okay. Omer?
Yeah, so hey everyone. I hope you're all doing well and are safe. I know these are tough times. Let me just start off by introducing myself. So, well, my name is Omer, and I graduated in December 2017, and I matched into internal medicine categorical at Northwell Mather Hospital in Long Island, New York. This was also my first cycle applying. So I think Farzam covered most of the pertinent points that are related to the ideal step timeline. I just want to just mention a small disclaimer here. If you guys are hoping that we're going to talk about what are the best books to study for step 1 or how do I get a 270, that's not something we're going to cover here. Basically, what our intention is with this is to guide you in the best way possible and to delineate the mistakes that we made and make sure you guys don't make those mistakes as well. So let me just start off with the timeline I used. So I started studying for my step 1 when usually anyone who wants to who has a plan on going to the United States does, which was around about in the middle of 4th year. That's when I bought all my Kaplans. That's when I bought the newest edition of First Aid, and that's when I started studying for it. But then it was really on and off, and I properly started studying for it in after 5th year, so after graduation. That's when I did all the question banks. That's when I gave all the NBME, my UWorld, all my assessments, and I gave my exam on January 2019. After which I studied for a month for CS, and I gave my CS in March, and then in August, which was cutting it very close, almost a month before the deadline for the match was about to start, that's when I gave my CK exam. So it was around 3 to 4 months after giving my CS exam. Now this timeline worked out for me perfectly, but this wasn't the ideal situation. I feel like I could have gotten into a more sort of a more top tier program if I had gone for electives during med school, gone like proper electives during med school. I went for AMOs, which by some standards aren't considered proper electives. So what do you need to do if you want proper electives? So as Farzam alluded to during his talk, the best thing to do is give your step 1. And what is the best time to give step 1? The best time to give step 1 is 4th year. That is the best time to give step 1. Ideally before 5th year, before your elective break. So you're done with step 1, then you go for electives. Then you can study for CK during your 5th year exams, because a lot of those topics overlap. So it's not going to be a problem at all. Then, during electives, you can also go for CS, or you can go for CS immediately afterwards, after you're done with CK. Then I think the best thing to do is secure some research or some postdoc, and just sort of lengthen that out until you go for your math cycle. Now I just want to talk a little bit about when do I give my step 3, what significance step 3 has on the match itself, because I get a lot of questions regarding that. So as far as step 3 is concerned, step 3 is a really weird exam, because step 3 is an exam you can only give in the United States. So for people who have problems regarding visas and stuff, or people who are going to the United States for who are ECFMG certified, which means you've given your step 1, your CK and your CS, and you're going to the United States for some other reason, I would highly suggest that you give your step 3 as well. The exam itself is difficult, but it's a very lenient exam as well. So thankfully that's not an issue. And what step 3 does is that it increases the number of interviews that you get. It definitely does, because I gave my step 3 January 2020. And this was just about the end of the math cycle. I didn't even get my result yet. I just emailed all the programs, and I still procured one interview, the program where I matched it, basically. So step 3 matters a lot. And later on, when I'm going to talk about visas and stuff, we're going to talk in detail about why step 3 matters when it comes to visa status and immigration status, because it plays into that as well. A couple of other things is the significance of scores. Now, this is a very precarious topic. which is do scores matter a lot. I didn't do as well in my steps. We might cover this in topics of some problems that you face during a match, but I just want to touch upon this briefly. So like as you guys saw in the NRMP data, step 1 still is the number one thing. I mean, this might change in the next couple of years because the whole message of the math cycle is shifting towards more clinical based academia. But right now, as of currently talking, step 1 is the most important thing when it comes to when it comes to programs selecting applicants. I mean, I'm not saying it's the only thing. I mean, your whole application matters. It might only be 20-30%, but it's still a major chunk of all the other factors that matter. I mean, it's never a good idea to take step 1 lightly. I'm sure most of you know that already, but I would give it more heed than possible. If you guys wanna like find out what the best study plan is, I advise you to talk to people who've given steps recently, because they'll be the best people to advise you, because resources keep changing.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, there's nothing other that I think is pertinent right now for the match itself. But I'm sure as more topics, there's just one thing that I want to add. So there are a couple of people that think CS can be given maybe just not in time for the exam cycle, for the math cycle. And you can be lenient with it, because a lot of AMGs, what they do is that they give their CS before December, but that doesn't almost always work for non-US IMGs or US IMGs, and it can compromise your application as well. It can cause you to lose a couple of interviews. So what I recommend is that you keep yourself updated on the website, and you keep checking for score delays, and you make sure that you have all your score reports and your ECFMG certified before you apply. I think that is very important, and I can't emphasize that enough. Otherwise, I think I'm just going to hand it off. And if you guys have any other questions, then I'll answer them after everyone's done talking. Thank you.
All right. I think Hanur Imran wanted to add something about the step 3 process.
Hey, thanks, Umair, for some. You've covered that pretty well. I just wanted to make 2 comments. One about step 3. I think what Umair said is absolutely true. Step 3 does boost your application, and if you're going for an H-1B visa, you need your step 3 score. So if you can take it, definitely take it. But something that I noticed between the different specialties is that for surgery, they don't care about step 3 as much, because most of the surgery residents take them during their research years or after their second year of residency. So when I spoke to pretty much online mentors, and I haven't taken step 3 yet, which I probably should, but it has more importance for internal medicine and maybe the other specialties, but it does not have as much weightage for surgery itself. And of course, taking another exam, getting it over with is definitely going to help you, but if you shouldn't be compromising on some other things, maybe as opposed to first taking instead of taking step 3, like it doesn't matter as much as it does for other specialties, but it does matter. Like if you take step 3, you'll be ready to get certified and licensed as a physician in the US. So you can apply for an H-1B visa, which is one of the greatest advantages of getting it done. Another comment was for your ECFMG certification, absolutely agree with what Umair said. I know many people who applied for the math cycle and at that point hadn't taken their step 2 CK or step 2 CS, and they took it within a month, and your ECFMG certification takes about a week after you've gotten all your scores. So if you took your step 2 CK like I did and Umair did right at the end, I took it like on August 16th. So I got my ECFMG certification 2 days before I submitted my application. So if you do that, it might be September 15th and you might not have your ECFMG certification in time. And it does matter as an IMG, because they're just looking for reasons to not select you. And being ECFMG certified is one of the main criteria that pretty much every residency program has for an IMG. So it would be ideal to take all your exams and be certified before your September 15th. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you. If you guys have any questions, please comment on the Facebook Live thing and we'll answer them in the end. All right, next we'll move on to the importance of US clinical experience and how that plays into the match. So we'll start off with Benin, and Zainab will be speaking on that.
Hi guys, my name is Benin Tayyab and I'm Master in Internal Medicine at MedStar Health. I want to talk about the different types of clinical experiences. One is elective, which is already mentioned in the talk. About electives that you do that basically during medical school. I really want to talk about the importance of externship and the observership choices that we make. We tend to go for the fact that we want to get a letter of recommendation and upload it on ERAS and fill in the 4 letter of recommendations that we need. And we tend to overlook the fact that how important the place that we do an observership at is. So I'd like to share the experience of the 2 math cycles that I was in. The first math cycle, in my first math cycle, I used the letter of recommendations from places where I did an observership with the help of AMO, and then at different clinics that I went to. So what we tend to do is that we connect with a Pakistani doctor and we go to their clinics far away, and they have no connection with a hospital, or even worse, no connection with a residency program. And what that does is that does get us a letter of recommendation, but it has very low importance. Firstly, it doesn't help you at all. It might just cover the fact that you need a letter of recommendation, but personally, it will not help you. How so? If you do an observership at a clinic, it really does not connect you with a hospital, specifically residency hospital. And if you do an observership at a residency hospital, which despite the fact that we think is very difficult to get, it is really not. Most of the residency hospitals do have observership programs. Unfortunately, they're not always posted on their websites. So the best information and advice that I would want to share with you guys is that way before the math cycle starts, once you put in all your information in Frida and you get a list of programs specific for you according to your filters, please email most of the programs, these residency programs. Say, for example, you're applying for internal medicine, email these programs. We tend to get really scared about the fact that we're going to email program directors or program coordinators. It really does not affect bad on you. Email them, ask them if they do have an observership program. Sometimes there is an observership program, and that very year the observership program has been cancelled. I emailed Sinai Hospital of Baltimore this year, and the information of observership is there on their website, but unfortunately the observership had been cancelled from this year onwards, as in 2019. And the same way, sometimes observerships are not listed on their website. So the best thing would be to email them, and email them way before the year that you're going to apply for the math cycle. This would help you how? Because you will be doing an observership among residents. Residents do help you. They email the program director. You might end up doing the rotation under the attending who is very significant in the program, or the chief resident, or even the program director. The place where I matched, I ended up doing an observership there. And the best part was that I ended up, that the rotation that I was doing in, my attending first was the chief president, and the second rotation was with the program director. And I did not set it, it was set up by them. So it will help you. The other thing that I want to mention is the importance of doing the timing of the observership. We tend to not do an observership or any clinical work during the time of September to February. That is an extremely important period of doing an observership and being involved in a residency program. The reason being that if you are in the observership program or doing a rotation at a hospital during the math cycle, a lot of times people do not show up for interviews, and since you are in the hospital, you definitely most of the time get that spot, and then you might end up getting matched. One of the people who matched into my program got an interview call that very day on the interview day, and she gave her interview in scrubs, and she ended up matching, right? So that's the importance of timing of doing the observership. Be there at the right time. The second thing that we hardly touch upon in our previous talks is the importance of externships. Externships are basically, they're extended rotations, and we tend to think that it is only for people who are there in the US, who have green cards, and people who do not have H4, H1 visas, basically visas which allow you to stay in the US for a long period of time, are not eligible for externship. That is completely wrong information. Externships are basically, they can be for as short as 4 months, but as long as 1 year. So even if you're on a B1, B2 visa, you have a 6-month entry, you can definitely apply for an externship. Again, as in an observership, most of the programs, residency programs, do not have externship mentioned on their websites. Again, you would have to go and email them. The only way to find out if a program really has an externship is if you email the program, or if you have a contact or someone, a friend in the program, and they can tell you about the externship program that these people have. The importance of externship, again, is that unlike in an observership, you can take histories and you can talk to the patients, but in an externship, you basically do not have patient contact, but you are a very important member of the team in which you're attending rounds, you're dealing with the social aspect of the patients, you're taking appointments, you're aiding the residents in every way possible, so you're getting into their good books. You attend rounds, you coordinate with the social workers and the nurses, so you basically know about the program. And most of the programs, at least in the places where I interviewed, they really liked people, wanted to take people who were already familiar with their program, with their software, with their people, because that really matters. And over here, I'm talking about community programs specifically. I'm not very sure about university programs because I do not have any experience with that. But that is the importance of externship. And I would really recommend that people apply for externships. You can apply for externship once you are done with your medical school. I think you need your USMLE Step 1 and Step 2 CK score. You need to be ECFMG certified for an externship. You do not get paid for externships, but a lot of programs have something else in place for the payment. Some of them provide you with conveyance, some of them provide you with a place to stay. So it is a really good shot, and we should think about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Baneen. All right, Zainab.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Zainab Faiza. I'm a graduate of class 2015 of Ziauddin University, and I've matched in a preliminary spot in general surgery at Indiana University, so I'll be applying again this year. Before I delve into observerships and electives, just know one thing. Your physical health, your mental health, the health and well-being of your family members are the most important things. They stand here, your career stands here. Everything else can wait, and inshallah things will work out as they did for me. So if you are concerned regarding the delay in your steps or your electives because of the coronavirus, it's okay. Do not give up hope. Nothing is ever in our control, and things work out, and they will, inshallah. So as Umair and Farzam stated, make sure, do your best to give your step 1 in the 4th year, so that in 5th year when you get there, you already know something. What worked for our year was we had an elective break between after we finished all the rotations and before our final exam, so we could do 2 electives back then, so which was very, very beneficial for us. Again, apply everywhere, apply individually to the programs, and also apply individually to the attendings as well. And just make use of every single contact you have. Alhamdulillah, I got very, very lucky. What happened was, one of my very close friends, most of you know about her, Wasfa Farooq, she got me the elective. The first one that I did was in cardiac surgery through her uncle who was working at that hospital. And that elective basically has been a game changer for me, as I'll talk about it later. So apply individually to attendings and to programs. I did all my electives in surgery and observerships in surgery only. So you just attach your cover letter, your CV, and why you're interested in their program. Okay, so once you get there, Your family members, like your parents, your siblings, whoever is paying for your trip, they've spent a shit ton of money for you to be there. So utilize this opportunity and make sure this counts. What, as Benin said, the most important thing is you get a good letter of recommendation from there, but also try that this program has a residency program, or maybe they can get you in a residency program. And what you want eventually is that you're attending the one you're working under, he or she becomes your mentor for the rest of your life. That's the main goal. So work your ass off. What happens is, like, I was in academic programs for my elective, so I always had US medical students with me. So being a foreign graduate or a foreign medical student, I made sure I was there before any of them. I made sure I stayed after any of them. And I made sure I did more histories than them. I presented more than them. I tried to scrub in as much as possible in the electives, but not in the observerships. One thing that was I did electives back in 2015. That's the year I graduated. And I did observerships in 2019. It's a very long gap, but it was fine eventually. So what I did was I applied for observerships everywhere. I applied to individual attendings, and then I always attached this letter of recommendation that I got from a doctor earlier in 2015. So alhamdulillah, as things worked out, this guy at IU, Indiana University, he knew the other doctor who wrote my letter, and he was like, oh, if he can say something like this for someone, he must be really impressed, and yeah, come on over. So that's how I got this observership at Indiana University. So just make sure you leave a good impression with them, and even if you don't have enough medical knowledge, that's all excusable, because we're not residents, we're not trained doctors, we're still medical students. But as long as you show interest and you show willingness to learn, that's the most important thing. What worked out for me here with this mentor was, so as an observer, I couldn't scrub in for any surgery. So what I could do, what I did all day was, like, I showed up for rounds in the morning, and then when there was a surgery, so I was always in the OR standing next to the anesthesiologist. So I was always, like, whenever they were not being super focused in the surgery, I always asked them questions, and they were always very willing to answer them. So this particular day, there was a lung transplant surgery. So in the morning, we had a shorter case in the morning, and I was there for that with the attending, and then the lung transplant surgery started at 11 a.m. So, and then by 4 p.m. in the evening, the US med student, he was like, oh, I'm leaving, because that's their regular rotation, like they leave when they're done. But since I was there just for this, I stayed on, and then the surgery ended 3 a.m. the following morning. And then after I was done, like after the attending cleaned up and everything, and he's like, oh, you're still here? And I said, yeah. And he's like, I've never seen a medical student do that. So that's what you have to do for them to remember you. And then, so that, like, I think that's what impressed him eventually. Like, he got me the postdoc research that I am working in currently right now. Like, I'm not under him, but I'm not under a different doctor, but it's the same team. But like, if you find and make good connections with someone, they will last long and they will pave the way for you. Also, so the other thing that also worked out for me was I did an observership at Mount Sinai in New York as well. That doctor knew someone at IU as well. So, like, when you're doing stuff and you're like, I don't know if things will eventually work out or not, because you have no idea, but in the bigger picture, things eventually do. So this guy, he knew someone at IU. So because of his contact, I got to meet my program director back in May 2019. And then, so a lot of people helped me get to where I am right now, but it's just like, if you leave a good impression, they will remember you. You don't have to know every single question that they ask you, but if you just show that you want to learn, that's absolutely what's required. Also, what also I want to just mention here only is, I wasn't going to apply this year. I was waiting to give my step 3 and do a whole year of research, but because of my mentor, because he was after me to apply this year. So I annoyed Manu Imran a lot. She's the reason I got all this. So what happened was, I did not give my step 2 until the first week of November, which is a bad idea. I got my step 2 score in December. I got ECFMD certified in December. That's when I emailed all the program, like, hello. So again, if things don't work out like how you planned them to be, you can have average USMLE scores, you can have virtually no interviews, you can give your steps late as you want. But if you have someone in your corner, things will work out. You only have to show dedication and just don't give up hope. And alhamdulillah, things will work out. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Zainab. All right, some people wanted to speak. Just going to go. I think another misconception is like there aren't any good electives or good observerships for like IMGs, which I don't think is very true. I think if you apply well in advance and you do your homework early on, you can end up finding really good programs to kind of apply to. It's just about like starting as the process as early as you can. First, I wanted to add something about elective break assignments.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing, by the way, amazing stuff by Zainab, really motivating for everyone, I hope. Just one thing I wanted to add, that as far as I remember from my year, Ziauddin, like the university itself, tends to decide on the elective break between 4th year and 5th year. Like during that break, our CRs reach out to us and ask us, oh, when do you guys want your elective break? So for us, that was around December, and our elective break was decided for April. That is something that needs to change from the university's end. So if there's anyone relevant here who's listening, or if they're second, third, 4th years here who are going to go for the electives next year, this is something that you guys need to push from now. Because if you guys don't know until December when you're getting your elective break, and suddenly in December, once final year starts, you guys find out you're going in April, you're not going to get any competitive electives at any universities. So even if you have your steps done, blah, 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 you'll be pushed into a corner and you will be looking at compromised options for electives. So you guys really need to push and make sure that you guys get your elective breaks assigned at least 8 to 10 months in advance. That's that.
Yeah, definitely. I think even in prior elective talks, like we've addressed that, where those things need to be decided the year before. And I would say even in first year, it's very late by the time they decide. Yeah. All right, Abbas?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one small point. If you have graduated already and you're looking for observerships, there's something that I did was, there's something offered by University of Houston, UT Houston. It's called a professional training. It's a 4-month training program that they have. And what they do is they combine basically observership with research. So they basically attach you with a research project and you can work on that with them. So that was a really good option, because when I was interviewing, they basically, everyone asked what's the professional training, and you can basically go, it's a glorified observership, but it's something more than an observership, and it definitely adds to what you've done after graduation. So it's one step probably better than an observership if you're looking for something like that. That's it.
All right, Hareem?
Okay, so I just wanted to mention something about externships. So since a lot of people do tend to take their steps and everything after they graduate, you do have some time between when you start to apply for a match and while you're taking your exams and everything. So externships are definitely very important. For my experience, I did an externship in psychiatry, and I started like October last year until February of this year. And every experience that I had during this externship, it basically helped out significantly during my interviews, because it is a clinical experience. You're directly dealing with patients. So whatever you are learning in the process, you are easily able to apply that to when they are asking you questions in your interviews. You can easily steer the conversation based on what you're doing at the time. And that actually shows that you're consistently still working at whatever it is that you're interested in. And they're able to find out more about how you are going through the externship as well. So I think that if you ever have the opportunity to go for an externship, there are very few, especially in different specialties, but you should definitely look for them. And especially if it's a proper official or externship program, those are the ones that you should be looking for. And they'll definitely help out. It definitely boosts your CV to in interview programs as well. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that.
All right, thanks. Madiha?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add something regarding people who are living in the US at the time of the match, until like before, like when you're giving your steps and stuff. So it might be harder for you to get electives once you've graduated. So what you can do is you can try applying to various jobs that you can do that might help you get clinical experience. For instance, some places you can actually work as a medical assistant, in which what you can do is that you can take patient vitals and do their EKGs and stuff. And in other places, you can work as a medical scribe, which means that you are essentially taking notes for the attending. So what happens when you're working as a scribe especially is that sometimes your notes can even include the imaging lab results and the plan and everything that the attending is planning on doing. And if you're applying for internal med specifically, most of the time medical scribes get hired at emergency departments. So when you're working at an emergency department, you're seeing a wide variety of cases. You're seeing how they're being managed and treated. So during your interviews, this is something that you can mention, that you worked as a medical scribe and all the different kinds of patients that you saw, as well as the fact that you have access to the EMR. And that might be something that the community hospitals especially appreciate. And you can tell them what kind of EMR you've been working with, like whether it's Epic or Cerner, so that they know that you're already aware of how the healthcare system in the US works, and that you're also aware of how to take notes and everything for internal med especially.
All right, thank you. I think Fatma wanted to add or ask something.
Hi, everyone. I'm just a medical student, but I wanted to add something related to electives that Farzam mentioned. So the thing is, hopefully Ziauddin will decide on the elective break in advance, but chances are that they might not. So what all of you should do, especially third and fourth years listening, you should email the dean, you should email Dr. Abbas Zafar, you should email Dr. Ahmed Fawad in North, and force them to decide on the elective break date. You should honestly do this in Jan and Feb, because if, let's say, the elective break is next year, places close a year in advance. Like some places will close in March and April of this year for March next year. So it's best you get on their cases, and hopefully they will eventually start telling you themselves. But until then, you should just email them and basically push them to decide on the elective break date. That's it.
Yeah, I agree. Student Affairs is watching, so they should definitely get on to this. Baneen wanted to add something.
Yeah, one thing that I forgot to mention is the importance of doing observerships or electives, any sort of US clinical experience in places which are IMG friendly. And an example of that would be University of Kentucky also has an observership program, and University of Rochester also has an observership program. But the difference, huge difference, is that University of Kentucky has less than 1% IMGs, and University of Rochester has two residency programs, one being Unity Health and the other is RGH, and both of them have above 75% of IMGs. So the difference here would be, what do you choose? You make a wise choice of doing an observership at a place which is IMG friendly, where you have a greater chance of landing an interview at, instead of doing at a university hospital just for the sake of the letter. That may be beneficial, but then again, it will not help you get any interviews or get matched there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. All right, we'll be moving on. Hanur Bakai is going to be speaking about postdoctoral experience and how that plays into the match. Hi, Manur.
Hi everyone. I graduated in 2016 and I've matched into a prelim program at Johns Hopkins. And I'm going to talk to you about a postdoc. So first off, there's a few things that you need to consider. Are you interested in academic medicine or not? Because that's basically what research is about. And there's a difference between the kind of labs you can apply to. There's basic sciences versus clinical sciences. Now, in terms of publication, basic sciences can take up to 5 years to get a publication. So if your main goal is to get your name on a paper, it's not going to happen. With basic sciences, you have to learn a lot of lab techniques. It's bench work. I mean, I was in a basic science lab at Beth Israel, which is a Harvard teaching hospital. And I had to start off learning everything from scratch. So now I can't speak as much to people who've done clinical research based, because that's more patient outcome and it's faster and easier. I mean, you faster to get a publication out that way. With basic sciences, it takes much longer because it's just harder to figure everything else out. How I got there was a lot of emailing. You need to have your cover letter that includes any previous research experience that you've had. You need to mention whether or not you're a citizen, kind of funding that you might be looking for. So basically, when I applied, I said that I would work without any pay, and I did that for about 8 months. And after that, I was shifted on to a paid position. But I think that also happened because the project was ongoing and it was longer. So then that's how it worked out. But a lot of the times, it's a huge commitment financially as well, because most of the time you don't get shifted onto a paid position. So keep that in mind when thinking about postdoctoral positions. So email everyone all the time while you're studying for your steps. If you have it in your mind that you want to go into academic medicine and you're interested in doing a postdoc, then you need to start emailing everyone. It helps a lot on your application, and overall it really does boost your application when you're applying. Contact everyone who's in a postdoc, who's from your university, whether it's AKU, Dow, anyone, reach out to them. You don't know where you're gonna end up, who's gonna tell you about some hospital that's hiring, some lab that's looking for people. So you have to just keep being very, very persistent. And I was emailing somewhere between 6 to 8 months before I found this one position that worked out. So bigger hospitals have more funding. So you want to look at bigger places. You want to apply to Yale, you want to apply to Harvard, you want to apply to University of Arizona, which is another place that's taking people, and all of these big institutions, and just start from there. Cleveland Clinic is also taking people for postdocs. You can reach out to, and you need to start applying way before. So you need to figure out your timeline and stuff. If you're sitting around, you're working on your step exams, that would be a good time for you to just start emailing every day aggressively. And another point that I would like to make is a personalized email sent to a PI is more helpful than a generic email that you're going to send to everyone. So try and open up the lab's website, go through a few of their papers. And if you can personalize it and go like, okay, you know what, I find your research interesting. This is why I want to work. This is what I want to be a part of. It's going to help you more. Second point, networking. Yes, that really, really helps. I think what really helped my application was the letter that my PI wrote for me, because I was, even during my interviews, it was mentioned to me that, you know, you have a really, really good letter from them. And I think that really does help when you're applying and you're interviewing, because if somebody within the system is sitting down and speaking for you and vouching for you, then that is going to make your application stand out amongst the rest, because I mean, no one really knows you're coming in and all of that. Observerships opportunities at the same, these are tough. Like I had 4 opportunities of observerships fall completely through before one worked out. And this was literally right before the month before application. I could not even get a letter out of them. It is hard to get an observership. Sometimes it works out easier, but yes, it is an opportunity for you to network, for you to get involved, for you to do whatever you can. So, and another point that I want to add on from before when we were talking about clinical electives. So when I was applying, I had medicine electives. That's what I did in my final year. And I was applying for surgery as well as medicine. And I used my medicine elective letter for my surgery clinical experience as well. So, and that was not held against me, which I thought it would be, but I did not want to risk attach. And I only had one observership in surgery. So what I understand from this process is that they do understand that you're coming from a foreign country. It is difficult to find clinical opportunities. It is not the same for everyone else. And they do understand this. So if you are having trouble finding electives and you feel like you've done an elective in one field and now you are applying to another, that's fine. It's not as big a deal. They just want to know that you've had clinical experience. What else is there? I think that's pretty much it. If you guys have any more questions, then we can address them at the end.
Manu, did you want to say something about externships?
No, I just wanted to talk about the used to some specialties.
All right. Okay. I think Zainab wanted to add something.
Yeah, so for postdocs, I did an observership at IU. I then did a postdoc. I'm still doing a postdoc at IU only until I switched to my residency at IU only. So what happened was initially, I just pestered a lot of people. That's what you have to do. The mentor who got me the postdoc, so he was like, just make sure he keeps you on. So my doctor, my PI was like, sorry, PI stands for principal investigator. It's for the research you're conducting. So he said, we have no money, we have no visa, we cannot let you be here. This is when I was on B1, B2 visa. I still had 3 more months left to go because we have a 6-month duration to leave the country. So what I told him was, okay, I'll work for you for free. You don't have to pay me, but can you can you get me a visa? So for 3 months, I was still working for him unofficially, but I was not getting paid. It was still a research observership. And then eventually, because I was still collecting money from I was talking to all of them, like, okay, I'm going to be here for another year. You'll have to be funding me. And alhamdulillah, they were all fine with it. But not everyone's family or relatives are that supportive. So alhamdulillah, I got very lucky that way. But what I kept on pushing to my PI was, can you start getting me a visa at least so that I can be here? Because that's the most important thing. I graduated a billion years ago. If I get a research, only then can I get surgery eventually. And then alhamdulillah, when he said he can get me a research, like when he can get me a visa, that's when he said, oh, since we are switching you on J1, we are legally bound to pay you as well. And then that worked out. So if you intend to get a research, like if you intend to do a postdoc, just do it at a place where you, like an academic program, like do an observership there so that they can keep you, that you can be there on long term. And then maybe eventually you can match there too. That's it.
For them?
Okay, yeah. So I just want to add this little bit where Manu was talking about how she emailed a lot of places and then finally got her postdoc position. So another way to go about it is that, like, I think end of second year, I went for a research elective to NIH. Back then, I just went for it because I saw my seniors do that and I didn't realize the importance of that. And just in that 6-week break, I did not get a lot out of it. However, by the time I finally was ending, I reached out to my PI back from second year, and he was more than happy to have me over back at NIH. And that was how I filled up my break between graduating and matching. So, I mean, that is another thing that maybe first and second years, or maybe even third years can try, that if you have like a 6-week, 4-week break anywhere in the middle and you're unable to get any observership or any clinical work, try to secure research, make really good contacts there. And then hopefully once you graduate and you have a lot of time, like maybe 9 months, a year, you can reach out to those people again. And if you've created a good impression, they'll probably be more than willing to have you back. That's what I did, and that's how I filled up my CV. And again, like that came up in each interview. Everyone was very interested to know what I've been up to at NIH for the past 9 months. So that's another thing a lot of people can do.
Yeah, just make most of your time and your break that you get in between med school.
Exactly what everyone's saying, that even if you don't realize the importance of something when it's happening, you don't know how it's going to pay you off later on. Yeah. So just keep networking and keep trying to impress people.
All right, thank you. All right, now we're going to start the best part about how to apply. So ERAS and how the application process works. So Abbas and Madiha will be talking about that. Who'd like to go first?
I can go first.
Okay, Madiha.
Okay, so my name's Madiha Siddiqui, and I graduated in 2016, and I've matched at St. Joseph Mercy in an internal medicine program on a categorical position. So I'm going to be talking about the whole entire application process. So you're done with your steps, you've gotten your clinical experience, or you're still getting it, and now you're thinking about applying to the match. So some of the things that you have to keep in mind is that it's a very much online process. So people who are technologically challenged, just Google everything. Google like whatever comes to your mind while you're doing this, and you're going to find all the answers. So first of all, what you have to do is, Aleena, can you take me to the slide with the ERAS pictures?
Fatma.
So the first thing that you have to do is that you have to, no, the one after this, the one with the purple heading. Yeah, that. So yeah, so the first thing that you have to do is that you have to get a ERAS token. And how you can do that is you have to go to the ECFMG OASIS website, and then you have to go to ERAS support services. From there, you can get your token, and nowadays it costs about $130, which is a non-refundable fee. So you can pay this and you'll get your token. And when you open this website, My ERAS, it will give you a little box in which you can enter this token. So you enter your number and you will have access to this website right here that is in front of us right now. So over here, what you can do is you have to upload your photos and your MSPs, etc. Again, you have to do these through ECFMG Oasis. You cannot do this on the ERAS website. However, what you can do is that you can release your steps transcripts to this, and you can also upload your, assign your MSPEs and personal statements, etc. to the various programs that you applied to. So one thing that I would like to add is that if you're applying to multiple specialties, please make sure that the personal statements and basically all the documents that you're using are specifically for that specialty, because sometimes when you're applying to multiple specialties, it can get a little bit confusing. But make sure that your personal statement and your LORs are catered to that particular specialty to which you're assigning it to. So another thing that I'd like to talk about is that when you're applying for the match, like some people have mentioned this before, you do not need your Step 2 CK or your CS scores on you and your ECFMG certificate. However, since we are IMGs and since we're basically like the lowest category that they want to call for an interview, we need to do everything that we can to step up our application. However, I did not have my CK scores when I was applying, and hence I did not have my ECFMG certificate. Regardless, I did get interviews, and I did inform them later that I have given my exam and I had updated these programs by emailing and also through ERAS regarding my CK scores. So that's just one thing to keep in mind, that just because if you don't have an exam on you or if you're giving it, even if you're applying late, doesn't mean that you will not match. It's just that you might not be like the person that they want to call in the very first month, but basically, yeah, it's not a deal breaker. All right. So the about the NRMP calendar. So I'm not going to discuss the dates right now because of the fact that this year we don't know anything because of COVID, because of this pandemic. We really don't know if the match is going to go throughout on the same timeline as it did before. As of now, NRMP has not decided to change their timeline. However, I do think that they will, because all of the steps have sort of been suspended. You can't give any of the step exams right now. I'm not sure about CS. I do remember Manu mentioning something about it being online. However, Step 1, Step 2 CK, and even Step 3, you cannot give any of these exams right now. All of the prometric centers are closed. So I do believe that the NRMP calendar dates are going to change. Either that or programs are going to be much more flexible about your scores. Alrighty. So moving on. Can you go to the slide ahead of this, please? Okay. So when you're applying, what are the components of your application? So it's going to be your CV, which is basically a couple of boxes and points, bullet points on the website. Like when you go to ERAS and you put in your token, it's sort of you're basically setting up your profile. So there are gonna be tables and boxes and stuff where you can enter information. So you don't have to design it yourself. You just have to enter the information in the boxes. You can also download your ERAS application once you're done making it, and then you can use it afterwards as well. Your LORs you have to upload through an LOR portal, which is also an AAMC website. So your LORs, you cannot upload directly through my ERAS. And also about the LORs, if they are unwaived, which is that you have seen the content of the LOR, that is when you can upload it yourself. But if the LOR is waived, which means that whoever is writing with the LOR is going to upload it and you are not aware of the contents, they will have to upload it onto the LOR portal. And you have to give them a specific number that is specific to your application. You have to give them that number. They're going to upload your LORs, and then that is also going to generate a number through which you have to upload your LOR onto your CV. Next is your personal statement, which is also something that you upload yourself. MSPEs are released through the medical school as well as the medical school transcript. And yeah, that's about it. So moving on to the next slide. So yeah, the application fees. So as we're all well aware, this is an expensive process, unfortunately. And most of us, because of the fact that we're IMGs and we want to increase our chances as much as we can, apply to like at least 100 programs or so. And because of that, it can get super duper expensive. So when you are applying to more than one specialties, make sure that the specialties that are sort of your like additional specialties are something that you really do want to apply to, rather than applying to specialties as a backup. Because if you're applying to specialties as a backup, most of the time they're going to know that that is sort of a backup and that you don't really prefer that thing. So don't think that you can lean on family medicine as a backup, especially because of the fact that if you look at the stats, internal medicine is the most likely to take a IMG as compared to all of the other specialties. So don't apply to backup specialties, at least that is my opinion, but do apply widely. However, some people can be limited in their circumstances. Like for instance, in my case, I was only looking at programs within an hour of my current location. So if you're someone who's sort of geographically limited, that is not something that will be held against you. In fact, it might give you an advantage because of the fact that when you apply, you're going to have a local address and a local phone number. So don't feel bad if you're not applying to a lot of programs. Even if you're applying to like 20 or 30 programs, you can still match. Don't give up hope. All right. And I think we've discussed this already. And yeah, that's about it.
Okay. Abbas?
Yeah, so briefly, what Madhya was saying about applying, you can apply widely, and there's this myth that IMGs ko apply nahi karna chahiye if the program has does not have a good match rate. But I don't know, mere wale program mein there were not a lot of IMGs, but I did get matched. So I think ye jo myth hai ki 20% at least hone chahiye IMGs, you shouldn't, if you have a strong CV, you should apply widely, or sare programs mein, university programs mein, you should apply. Or kya, but that's it. MSPE, the MSPE is, now IMGs ke liye it's not that important. That's what everyone says, that's what the consensus is. But I think it's a positive if you have a good one. If you have a good MSPE, if you have honors in a lot of subjects, I think that does. I had a few honors, and jab mere interviews ho rahe the program directors did comment on that. So I think it does boost your CV, but it's not a deal breaker. If you have an average MSPE, it's not a deal breaker. It's what the MSPE is. It's basically a letter to the program director from your medical school. It basically gives them an objective assessment of your academic performance, and also basically a few there are 6 competencies jo ACGMP dekhna chahta hai in professionalism. You can look it up on their website. That's what the format wants. That's what can you go to the next slide? Let me just explain here. So no, the one above that. So this is fine. So noteworthy, the one below that. Thank you. So the noteworthy characteristics, isme they want you to mention professionalism, things like that. So these are going to be 3 bullet points in which basically the salient features of the candidate is going to be mentioned. Then you have the academic history over here, and this is the academic performance part. Acha, this is the latest sort of format they want for the MSPE. It's different from the one that they wanted before. And it's a little difficult to get, because what they want basically is they want the clerkship divided into different specialties, and they want the clerkship supervisor to basically have a bit of his evaluation here. So yahan pe you'll have to have their evaluation. For example, if it's surgery, you need to get it from the head of department, ya jo bhi whoever observed you during those periods, and you need to get his evaluation right here. So that's a bit difficult to get. I think you guys should talk to to Professor Abbas Zafar about this format of the MSPE and convince him that you need basically evaluation from each specialty supervisor. And I think that'll be, because that's one of the requirements. I don't know if they, for IMGs, if that's something that they really, really want, but that's a new format that's on the website. So I think it's better if you have it in this format. Can you go to the next slide, please? Right, so yahan pe there's one thing missing. You can also mention your electives here. After the summary, you can mention all your electives that you've done, and so that they know, okay, you got time to do electives over here. You can also mention research. There's no separate section from research. If you did research in med school, you can mention it in your noteworthy characteristics. But apart from that, the MSP is basically not that important for IMGs. I don't know how much importance it holds, but they did ask me about it during my interview, so I don't know what to tell you guys. Can you go to the next slide? Okay, so the transcript. So that's basically you get the combined transcript from from Ziauddin that you have to get from the examination office. Usme you basically credit hours hote hain sare, and they mentioned your electives are also mentioned over there. So this is an important document. Yeah, this will be uploaded by the Dean's office. The MSPE is also uploaded by the Dean's office. I think Dr. Arshad handles all of this. She still handles this. So yeah, that's about it. Yeah. Can you go to the next slide, please? The USMLE transcript. Again, there's an $80 fee for this. ERASPE, this has to be authorized for release. It's just a click of a button. It's nothing complicated. So this will be sent to the different programs that you're applying to, and this is different from the score report that you get. But you don't see your transcript. This goes directly to the programs that you have applied to. It does take time though, so if you forget to authorize it, just remember it takes 1 to 2 days to process. Can you go to the next slide, please?
All right. Before we start personal statement, Madiha wanted to add something again.
Yeah, so just to add to Abbas's point about transmitting your scores, you have to pay an $80 fee. So when you have an additional score to add, for instance, if you've given your CK and you would like to transmit your transcripts again, it does not mean that you have to pay the amount again. It's only a one-time fee, and you won't have to pay it again when you are reassigning your scores. Secondly, one thing that I was adding at the time of application, that you don't need to have all of your steps. There is more flexibility when it comes to step 2 CK because of the fact that the reporting time is usually 2 weeks. However, with step 2 CS, the reporting time is much longer. So if you don't have your CS, it's okay if you're applying without it, but you are in a better position if you already have your CS results on you.
Okay, Omer?
Okay, so I just want to add a few things to this that I don't know if anyone's going to mention later on, is when you're setting up your application, just make sure you do your own research when you're selecting what programs you're going to apply to. I don't know if that's going to be covered later on. I'm not sure about that. But just make sure you do your own research, make sure you make your own lists, make sure you go to each program's website, make sure if there's no detail on their website, you contact the program coordinator or the program director and find out, for example, visa statuses, do the sponsor J1s, stuff like that. Other than that, I'm not sure if anyone matched into a California program recently, but even though they waived PTAL, I don't think they're really open to the idea of IMGs joining. So so that is something you have to look into, because I applied to all the California programs where I am, and it was a complete waste of money. Other than that, just in terms of the software itself for the application, there's some things that get so basically what you do is there's a list of all the programs that you've selected, so you save all the programs, and then when you save all the programs, what happens is that you have to assign each document to each program. Then there's some documents that get assigned to all the programs together, which is like a transcript, which will get assigned to all of them together. But then there's some that you have to assign individually. So for instance, your personal statement, you can assign individually to each program. So you have to just make sure that it's been assigned to each program before you click on the submit list or whatever. Also, they've added a new feature when it was our match, that they allow you to add a document to multiple programs. So what you can do is you can go on to one of the options, and you can select each program, and then you can select what document you want added to it. I mean, these are all just technical things, but you just need to be aware of them so that you just don't waste time and you do it in a smart way. Yeah, so that's just about it. Yeah.
For Zam?
Okay, yeah, so just two things that I wanted to mention. So Abbas talked about MSBE. We've touched upon it again and again that you want to make sure that you stay in the top quartile of your class. I would say that the importance of this will probably increase moving forward, because once step one becomes pass and fail, they will probably have to look at other ways to categorize students and to shortlist students for interviews, or maybe post that even. So yeah, CK importance will become a lot more, and I do think that MSB importance will also increase. So try your best to stay in the top quartile of your class. Secondly, the format of the MSB that has changed. So our cycle, which we applied it, was the first cycle that had the new MSB format, which is why I think that a lot of programs right now were lenient about, we're lenient with the old format even, but maybe moving forwards, they're not going to be that lenient, and they will need you, or at least they expect your university to send in your MSBEs according to the new format. So, I mean, I don't think it is just something that you can try and see if Ziauddin can do it for you. You have to push for it. And yeah, is anyone, by the way, going to talk about Doximity anywhere in the talk? You can just raise your hand, so then I won't mention it right now. Okay, so Doximity is just an app. What that does, so there are two apps. So one is Frida, which basically gives you an overall idea about, you can categorically see which programs you would be best suited for in terms of percentage of IMGs matched there and all that. Doximity is more focused towards ranking. So for any of the type A personalities that are obsessed with that, Doximity is probably a good tool for you to use. You can download the app, make an account there, and then it's very easy to navigate through. You can look at programs in a certain state, according to their rankings, based off of their reputations, based off of their research outputs, based off of the fellowships that they offer, or their board pass rate and all of that. So if you are applying to a lot of programs and maybe you want to divide your entire list of applications into top tier, mid tier, low tier, Doximity is probably a good tool that you can use.
All right, thank you. Talha?
Yes, hi, my name is Talha, and I matched this year at Universal Medical Center at a categorical position. And continuing from what Umair said about selecting programs, what I want to say is that this is a good time to start contacting programs. You could make a draft email saying that, hi, my name is XYZ, I have this CV, and this is my score, and these are my observerships, and I would like to apply to your program in the upcoming match. And what do you think I can do to improve my CV so that you could consider me for your program? And this is a good way for you to start contacting programs at this point. And when in the future you do contact programs for interviews or post-interview communication, I'd recommend that you follow the same email link so they know that you've been in contact with them from quite some time. So that's a good way to start contacting programs even before the match application has actually started.
All right, Umair? Thank you.
Yeah, just to quickly add, okay, so again, just talking about the application itself. So once you upload all the documents, some of those documents, it takes time for it to actually be uploaded, and so that you can assign them to each program. So for instance, an LOR can take up till 10 days. So I just want you guys to be aware of that fact. Those who are trying to do their rotations towards the beginning of the match cycle, just be aware of the fact that if you do get an LOR, it might take some time, and during that period it's usually busier, so it takes more time for it to be uploaded. So if you have some LORs that you have, so just try and get them uploaded from before, like a couple of weeks before the match starts. That's just about it. Yeah.
Okay, I had a question. Yeah, I've read about it, but I just wanted to confirm it. Like LORs you carry forward from previous match cycles, right? Like if you apply for a match cycle and then you don't go for somebody to answer.
Yes. Yeah. They do. Yeah.
Yeah, your LORs get saved in ERAS and you can use them in the subsequent match
Like
cycle.
a subsequent. Okay,
Yes.
great.
So I applied
Right.
in March 2018. I did not apply in March 2019, but I used my March 2018 LOR in March 2020. So it can last up to 3 years or more, I think.
Okay. Yeah, because I think
Can I just?
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, can I just add? It's always better to have a recent LOR, though. It's always better to have an LOR from the last 6 months. So I mean, I just want to add that.
Okay.
That's true. That's definitely true. But like if you get an LOR from your head of the department in Ziauddin, you can always use the one that you used in the previous math cycle.
Okay. I will talk about personal statement. Mahanur will be speaking about that.
Okay, so personal statement, you want to start writing before, because this is going to be a lot of drafts before you're ready to submit it. I think wrote at least 10 to 15 drafts. I sent them to multiple people and I still hated mine in the end. So it's just a very annoying task and you have to keep going over and over again. So you want to make it a story, you want it to flow correctly, you want someone to be like interested in reading it, right? You have to keep in mind that the person reading your personal statement is probably reading hundreds of personal statements and your application is one of many. So you want someone who can remember it. So send it to people and you want that sort of feedback that, okay, they remembered something that was in your personal statement that you wrote. And obviously the obvious things are that you should not have any grammatical errors in your personal statement. You should not have any spelling mistakes. Those are just a given. So give it to somebody who can proofread it for you. Make sure you go back and check it. One technique that I found helpful was that you start reading each sentence independently from the bottom and then you work your way up. And then that helps you analyze a sentence structure and to see how it makes sense or not. I mean, that's just a tip that I've always used. Other than that, get people to read it. If you can get people who are close to, some people might not be comfortable sending their personal statements to you, but if you can get a hold of a few of them, that'll be really helpful. So people who have matched. If not, then you can log into sites like Reddit or go online, and there's so many samples that are available to you. Don't plagiarize at all, never plagiarize, but just get a few like ideas on how people come about their personal statements. You want to make it about you and what your story is. What are you bringing to the program? And when you're talking about things that are already mentioned on your CV, it's not supposed to be a list of accomplishments that you have. Rather, if you are going to talk about something that's on your CV, you want to talk about what you got out of that. Like, okay, I did this elective and I had this attending that I was working with. This was a quality of the attending that you would want in yourself or something. I'm just giving like ideas that you can go into. Just don't just go like, oh, I went here and I did this and start detailing that entire experience that you had, because that's already in your CV anyway. And obviously, why do you want to do a particular specialty over another? If you're applying to multiple specialties, you will have to write a personal statement for each one of them and tailor them accordingly. If you have any interesting stories, you can talk about those. You want it to be catchy. So like keep in mind that, people will you want it to be memorable as well. And I think that's about it. If you guys have any more questions regarding personal statement or postdoc, I can like answer them at the end.
Okay, Baneen?
Yeah, okay. And these are also important. Don't ramble on. Keep it one page long. These are general outlines that you guys can look at. Okay, thanks.
Manu basically covered the entire personal statement, but I really wanted to add that we tend to think about, crazy scenarios, basketball and stuff. That all really does affect when your personal statement is read out. But if there's something that has affected you emotionally, or anything bad that may have happened in your life, or even the fact that you did not match in the previous math cycle, you can really play along and use that in your personal statement. So this year's personal statement was about the fact that I did not match in the previous math cycle. And despite the fact that people tend to say that do not let the programs know that you applied for the match and you did not get matched, I still used that fact and used it in my personal statement, and it did play really well for me. So yeah.
Okay. Anam?
Hi everyone. I'm Anam. I am from batch 19, graduated in 2018, and I matched into Bassett Medical Center at Cooperstown. So I wanted to add something about the personal statement. It might not be the most important thing in your application, but what I know is that it can totally blow your application, because I know a few people, and the only thing that changed in their application when they did not match and when they did match was their personal statement. So the thing about your personal statement is, please do not brag about yourselves. Like when we tend to write about ourselves, we're just bragging about how amazing we are. And also don't use extensive vocab, because, like this is not a literature book. So we just have to be very careful. And also, if you have gap in your CV and if you have a gap year, you should definitely address it in your personal statement, because that is going to be your explanation before the programs actually meet you. So they would want to know that why is there a gap on your CV, and then if they think it's appropriate, and they might just call you based on that. That's about it.
All right, thanks. Madiha?
Yeah, so I wanted to add something that when you're writing your personal statement, you can use something that emotionally motivated you, but try not to go into religion or politics. You don't want a polarizing personal statement, because people might have opinions different than yours. Also, do not brag, like do not say that I am hardworking, I'm a team player, blah, blah, blah. Instead, write about experiences that may sort of show that you are hardworking or that you are a team player. Other than that, you can also talk about non-medical work experience if you have any, or any volunteer experience. And that can, again, also sort of, without glaringly saying that you have this or that quality, can sort of vouch for you as a person. Also, you can have your personal statement checked by like some of your English literature friends if you want. However, that being said, remember that a good personal statement is different for different programs or different fields. So whereas some programs might think your personal statement is amazing, others might hate it. So just keep that in mind.
All right, Omer?
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone else pretty much covered it, but I just want to add a few things. So the first thing is, no one can tell you what your personal statement should be. I mean, it's the most personal thing that's probably going to be part of your application, right? Just a few things that I want to mention is that they already know your CV, they already know all your accomplishments, they already know kya score aaye hain, what externships you've been on, what your LORs are. Your academic prowess speaks for itself, right? But what does a personal statement do? It basically highlights your personality. So I think if anything you should do with your personal statement is you should talk about your journey outside of medical school and how it correlates to your journey outside of being a physician, and how it correlates to you being a better physician or clinician itself. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but I mean, you have to like weave in outside interests as well. It just can't be about, okay, I just did this, I did that, and I went on this externship, I went on that externship. I know that is the best. That is the best personal statement in a traditional sense, but it's not going to make you stand out from all the other people. It might even make you seem like a robot. Also, another thing is, it's always a good thing to avoid cliches. So never say stuff like, because my dad's a doctor, or I come from a family of doctors. But I mean, the one thing that I knew not to say was, just because my dad's a doctor, or there's a doctor in the family, I became a doctor. I don't know. There are many cliches that you should avoid. I mean, you can search them up on the internet. And other things are, some people say address your red flags on the personal statement. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. But I mean, you could, like, you talk about CS failures. I mean, it all depends on how you weave it in. It depends on how good of a writer you are. Because some people can't do it eloquently, but there are some people who can. So it just depends on you. If you can, then yeah, go for it. And also, yeah, just get it checked by as many people as possible. Send it to whoever you can. It doesn't matter if their English is good or not. but it's just the impression that it gives you. Some personal statements stand out, but the thing about a personal statement is that if it's good, no one's going to notice. But if it's bad, then that's really going to affect your application. I mean, that's about it.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to, I think next is letter of recommendations. I think Zainab's going to be speaking about that. Go ahead, sorry.
Was I speaking?
Yeah, go. Who's
Okay.
having trouble?
Okay, so for me, what I did was, since I applied just in general surgery, I saw one of the questions there on Facebook as well. I did not apply to IM because I was under the impression I'm not gonna match this year because I didn't have my step 2 scores and everything, and I was applying so late. I was under the impression I was not gonna go unmatched this year and gonna apply again next year. So I applied to very limited number of general surgery programs only. So one of the letters I needed was Dr. Shafiqur Rahman's, which I got again because I was not there. My friend uploaded so before that, you have to write your letter of recommendations yourself, at least for your faculty in Pakistan. So you write the entire thing and then you submit it to them. So Dr. Ijaz Vora was doing it for internal medicine, Dr. Shafiqur Rahman was doing it for general surgery, and then whoever is there gets it signed and then uploads it for you on ERAS. And then for my other LORs here, one I got it from my attending who I did the cardiac surgery observership under. The third one I got was from my research principal investigator. Then I got another LOR from my surgeon who was in New York, although Mount Sinai only offers observerships for 2 weeks only. But since it was the most recent thing and he was the head of the pediatric surgery there, so his letter counted for a lot. And also he was the head of fellowships there, so he had good weightage writing me a letter. So you have to see whoever can impact your application most and whichever is most recent. Some of us won't have electives or researches that were recent. That's okay, as long as you know they wrote you a very good letter. That's fine. When you are asking anyone to write you a letter of recommendation, just email them what all you want to be included in that. Because, for example, some doctors may not remember that you came over on weekends or you were very smart when you were presenting something. So just make sure you give them an outline and then they usually will follow through and then submit that. The thing that you want to do is you have to make sure that you do not see them. So you have to waive, you have to waive the offer that you cannot see them and they can just upload them directly, which increases the weightage of the LORs that are submitted in ERAS. And if anyone else wants to add something to that, they can.
I think we'll do that in the end.
Okay.
I can unmute you.
Yes. So I have a point regarding the letter of recommendation. There is a myth that Pakistani recommendations are not at all accepted in the United States. I somewhat disagree. I applied to both internal medicine and pediatrics, and for pediatrics, 3 out of my 4 letters were written by Pakistani doctors. I took one letter from Dr. Zain, there was one from Dr. Iqbal, and 1 letter from my consultant in the United States. And in most of my interviews, they commented on my letter of recommendation and said that it was very well written. So the point is that there are 3 things regarding letter of recommendation that you should know about. Number 1, who is writing the letter of recommendation, as in what his designation is. Number 2, is it in a university letterhead or is it in a private clinic letterhead? That's also very important. Yeah, that's it. 2 things that you should consider about. Of course, United States LOR have a higher weightage as compared to Pakistani LORs, but saying that Pakistani LORs have no weightage, I don't think that's entirely true.
Okay. Anna?
Okay, so I wanted to just add that, when you're rotating in during your electives and just for a month, so there is and they're just going to write a very average letter compared to when you were there and they were interacting with you, and they would write a better letter. So what you could do is, what I did actually was that I got them to fill the evaluation forms that we get from Ziauddin and made them add some personal comments at the end. And when I was applying, I actually emailed them with a picture of the comments that they wrote while I was rotating with them, so that they can add those points in the letter, and it could just be more than an average letter of recommendation. So that's a good thing, because there are high chances they would not remember you by the time you're applying.
All right, thank you. I think we'll move on to the next phase of the process, which is after the application, the interviews and the trails. So Talha will be speaking about that.
Yes. So regarding interviews, the thing about first, the dress about the interview, it's pretty evident. Guys, it's pretty easy. You just need to have a decent suit. Don't be too shabby on your interview day. Just don't be wear what you're comfortable with, but don't try to stand out by wearing too fancy colored suits. For girls, it's better if someone out there from the girls' side talk about what dress should be worn from the girls' side. But if you're considering if I should wear this dress or not, I think you shouldn't wear it, because you shouldn't be considering it at the first place. So again, like I said, basically your interviews can be divided into 4 parts. And you have your one-on-one interviews. That's the most common type of interviews. Then you might have a panel interview. I also had a group interview and a phone interview. Actually, my first interview was a phone interview. And phone interviews are going to be more important moving forward because of the COVID situations. I read a post that AMC has recommended that this year application interviews should be taken on the phone, virtual interviews. I don't know how that is going to pan out in the future. And I don't know about everyone else, because I'm not such a good talker on the phone. Interview is more than just talking. It's your body language, how you interact with residents, how you interact with faculties. Everything is included in your interview. And most of my interviews were one-on-one interviews. Your typical interview day starts at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. You usually check in with the security. You're handed out a badge and a portfolio, and you're taken to a room with all the other applicants. Program coordinator checks in, briefs you how the day would go on, and then usually the chief resident or the program director comes in and talks about their program. Then you're mostly divided into 2 groups. One group goes to take the tour, the other group goes for the interview. Then you switch places, and by the end of the day, which is at around 1, 2, or 3, you're done. You have lunch together. You have chances to ask questions with residents, with the faculty, with the program director. Interviews are pretty laid back. I was very apprehensive attending my first interview, but an interview is actually just a normal conversation with another human being. They've seen your CV, they like what they've seen, and you're there because they like you. And now it's just about confirming what they think. They just want to know how are you going to fit it into your program. That's why they conduct interviews. They don't want some weirdos in their program. They just want to meet you in person and see that if you do fit in your program. And that is what happens in your interview. My recommendation is, when you go to your interviews, please read your CV and read your personal statements. Especially at the end of the trail, it's been a while since you've read your CV and your personal statement, and you tend to forget out on some points. And that might come along in your interview questions. So please do make sure that you read your CV and personal statements. Um, Usually before interviews, you can have a pre-interview dinner or not. It depends on program. And interview, you usually have 1 or 2 interviews per day, one with a program director and one with a faculty, or every bring back common questions. The most common question are, can you tell me something about yourself? Okay, why this program? What are your future aims? How do you fit into our program? And why should we hire you? Stuff like that. And one of the best advices that I got before my interview began was just be yourself and don't try to be someone you're not. Because they've been taking interviews for a long time and they know when you're faking out. So just be yourself, and that's about it. Please do make sure that you research programs when you go in for your interviews. Researching programs mean trying to find out if they have any fellowships, do they offer research, how do they evaluate residents, stuff like that. But in general, preparing specifically for questions, you should have a rough idea as to what you would be answering, but please don't go to learn answers and go over there. Yeah, that's about it.
All right, thank you. All right. Okay. Fine, we'll move on to the next part of this, which is going to be once you've given your interviews, then how do you rank your programs and the process that comes after it. So Harim and Abbas will be speaking about that. Harim, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so for the rank order list, so basically you have to register for the NRMP. Usually it opens up, I think, around the same time that we register for the match. You get like a ID number for that. The cost is around $85, I believe, and I think the deadline is around the end of November. So you have to register for that by that time. The rank order list usually opens up in the middle of January, around January 15th. So essentially you go to the NRMP website and they have like an option for the rank order list. So for most of the people, if you're only applying to one specialty, you just have to rank according to which programs you want as your top programs, the ones that you have only interviewed at. If you are applying to multiple programs, you can easily apply them all, rank them all in one list, but obviously you have to make sure that you know which one is your top pick and which one is not. And when it comes to ranking your programs, everyone says make sure, you know, like it's where you want to go, what your opinion is, where you think that you'll be fitting in. So you have to take all of those things into consideration, the locations, whether you can adjust to that location or not. And whether you think that that program is the best for you. So, but I that you have to think very practically. I mean that is very confusing. There is a video that you've ranked as number 1. That hospital doesn't necessarily have to rank you as their top pick as well. But if at any point you guys have some kind of a match, hence the name, then you'll be able to match at that location. However, in a lot of programs, there is also, because they also have to make a list of which residents they would like to, put into their program, you might not necessarily be in like the number 1 or number 2 position. You might be in the number 3 position. If the first 2 people have not given an answer or they're still waiting on them, you're essentially kind of in a waiting list. And if they do respond and they get accepted into it, then you're not going to be included into the list. So it also depends upon how many residents are accepted into a program. So again, you have to be very careful and kind of have to be very practical, but also make sure that you know what top picks that you want as your choices. Besides that, there's also for a lot of programs like the advanced programs, they do have supplementary lists. So I'll let Abbas explain that to you guys.
So when you're applying, you'll have a primary rank order list. But for some specialties, such as, I think there are 4 neurology, anesthesiology, dermatology, and radiology. There'll be some programs that are advanced. So basically, an advanced program is one which has a separate prelim. You have to apply separately for that prelim position, and sometimes you have to interview for that prelim position separately as well. So if you have an advanced program on your rank order list, there'll be a small icon right next to your primary rank order list, which says supplementary rank order list. You can add as many prelim programs as you interviewed in that supplementary rank order list, and that just links to the program on your list in the primary rank order list. For example, you have Mercy as your advanced program in your primary list. So there'll be a small icon right next to it which says supplementary list. And you can go click there. There'll be a new window, and that will show you the supplementary list. You can add on as many preliminary programs that you want, as many as you want, as many actually that you interviewed are. And then that just links to that advanced program. It's not a complicated procedure. There are videos online. I think it is a tough thing to make the rank order list, but it's not complicated in the sense that you just have to rank the top program, the reach program, as your top choice. You don't have to worry about how IMG friendly they are, but anything like that. You just have to rank it the best program as number one. So that's basically the bottom line of the rank order list. That's it. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks. Okay, next we'll address some of the red flags, or like some of those frequently asked questions about like what to avoid, what not to. Are we doing visas first? Sorry. Do you want to? Okay, let's go ahead and do that first. Okay, Omer will be speaking about like the visa process.
So hello again. So it's I mean, visas is the elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. It's no secret that it's been getting more and more difficult for IMGs to get visas. I mean, even IMGs who are getting visas, they're getting visas for a couple of months. I'm talking about B1 or B2s, when before they used to get them for 5 years. I'm specifically talking about Pakistani IMGs over here, not from any other country. So people before who used to get 5-year visas used to do their CS exams, all the observerships. They used to do everything in that 5 years. But now they're only giving visas for a couple of months, and it's become more difficult. I don't know what to comment on that. I personally got my visa 5 years. My visa was rejected once, but I was eventually able to get a 5-year visa. So I just want to generally want to talk about visas pertaining to programs and what to look for in a program when it comes to a visa. So there are two main types of visas. There's the H-1B visa, and then there's the J-1 visa. So the J-1 visa is also called the exchange scholar visa, and the H-1B visa is a dual intent visa. So I'm just going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of both the visas, some of the differences. J-1 visa is the default visa. So nearly all programs that are going to sponsor IMGs are going to, and all programs that are going to sponsor IMGs are going to be able to provide that, because ECFMG essentially sponsors J-1 visas. Whereas H-1B is more difficult to get. H-1B is a program-sponsored visa. So that just depends on the program. So if the program is willing to pay money, because H-1B requires more securities, it has more liabilities. So if the program is able to do that, then you can get an H-1B visa from that program. Now, the programs that do sponsor H-1B visas, there are few. So that's where research comes into play. So just make sure you guys do your research. If you guys want an H-1B visa, make sure the program that you talk to sponsors it. There are a couple, there are some pre-match programs. Pre-match programs are programs that match candidates outside the cycle, outside the NRMP cycle. I'll talk about that briefly afterwards. But there are programs like Bronx Care, Brookdale. There's some programs in Chicago like Amita Health. There are many other programs all across the United States that do that. And for an H-1B visa, which I'm going to talk about first, you require a step 3. It requires you to have the state medical license, which requires a step 3. The paperwork is also more difficult. It takes longer. It takes around 3 to 4 months. But if you're doing premium processing, then that'll take a couple of weeks. Right now, I don't think they're doing premium processing. I'm not sure. I have a couple of friends who are applying. I can find out for you guys. Otherwise, it's valid for 6 years. And usually H-1B visas, they're perfect for people who want to transition into citizenship, who want to transition into green card. Because after you're done with your residency, or even during your residency, you can start filing for your green card application. So it's really good for that. And other things that you need to understand is that it takes around $1,300 from your own pocket. Other stuff, as I mentioned before, is J1 visa. Now, the J1 visa that you get is basically sponsored by ACFMG. It has a faster processing time. A good thing about the J1 is that a lot of fellowships, they prefer that you come on a J1. So, for instance, if you're applying to a specialty, you'll have around 100 programs that are willing to take you on if you have a J1 visa. But then there'll be only 5 or 6 that are willing to take you on if you have an H-1B, or even less. So that's a good thing about the J1 visa. But a downside about the J1 visa is that it's not as simple to transition to a green card, and you have to prove ties to your home country. And what that means is that when you go to the embassy, if you go on an H-1B visa, because it's a dual intent visa, you can just say that I'm going for this job, and they won't question you about your ties to your home country. So they won't question you about your house. They won't question you about what your parents do. About if you're married, who you're married to, the education program discuss. So after 3 years, if you get a fellowship job, for instance, you get into cardiovascular disease, and that'll be 6 years. But you still have to go back to your for 3 years, and those are fairly easy to come by. Or you work in a military fees. There's lots of information about that online, and apart from that, I think so. The question, so just to summarize, the question that I get asked a lot is, so what visa should I look for when I'm applying for a program? So the easy answer to that is, if you want a green card and if you want to immigrate later on, then apply for H-1B. If you want a fellowship later on, then I think the better option is J-1 visa. But the ideal scenario would be if you get into a university program that sponsors an H-1B visa. That'll be the ideal scenario, because a university program, you'll probably by default get into a fellowship, and you can also work on getting a green card status. So, but you might think that it's all done and finished. If I get a J1, I won't be able to stay in the US, but that's not true as well. So if you get a J1, for instance, if I got my J1, because I'm applying for J1s, so what I'll do is I'll do my residency for 3 years. Then I might do fellowship for another 2-3 years, or I might work as in a visa waiver job. So after that period, or during my visa waiver job, I can also apply for an H-1B. So I apply for an H-1B, and then from H-1B I can transition into a green card. Now all this might seem like rocket science. It might seem like it's really complicated and stuff, and it's a little difficult to digest. It's all numbers and facts. But if you guys have any questions related to this, I know this is a really big topic. It's something that people don't like to discuss because it's just a nerve wrack just getting into all the details. You can ask me. Mm-hmm. So also just one little thing. So in a J1, your dependents, so those are if you have children under the age of 21 or your spouses, they get a J2 visa, and you can work in that. You can work using a J2 visa. But I think with an H1B, you get an H4A. I'm not sure if your dependent can work, but I think Banin will be able to answer that. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, Banin.
So a few more facts about H1. So previously, until 2018, H1 premium processing was open, and for that you had to pay out of your pocket around $1,300, in which you would get the H1 visa at a very fast rate, I think within 2 days. That's what happened with us last year. But from this year onwards, the premium processing has been cancelled, because of which your processing time is equal to the J1 processing time. So it can take from 4 weeks to around 4 months. The second thing that I wanted to mention was that previously a big difference between J1 and H1 was that once you get the H1, you are set to be in the US for the next 3 years, and you do not have to continuously reapply for H1 even if you were traveling outside of US. Whereas for J1, if you traveled outside US, you had to reapply for J1. But from this year onwards, they have changed it, and now every time you leave the US, you will have to reapply for H1. I'm talking about every year, being the fact that H1 is now being given on an yearly basis. So if you leave the US after your expiry date, you will have to reapply. However, you can, or even if your J1 expires, so you can continue applying for an extension as long as 3 years. Another fact is that in H1, okay, let's skip it. About the dependence visa, there is J2 if your spouse gets a J1, and there's H4 if your spouse gets an H1B. Many of us decide to get married at the time we get matched, and it is also very important that your significant other knows about which visa would help them in the US. So make a very informed decision and make a combined decision, because you don't want them to suffer later, right? So the thing is that she or he can work, but if you get an H4 visa, you are not allowed to work because of the fact that you're not eligible for a social security number, whereas on J2 you get a social security number. So if on H4 you do not get a social security number, you cannot work. However, you can study, you can apply for loans, you can drive a car, you can get a license. But then again, if you want to travel in a domestic flight, you will have to carry your passport with you, because if you do not have an SSN, you cannot get a state ID. So that's about J1 and H4, J2 and H4.
Okay, just to add quickly, I get this question where people say, do I have to get registered with the PMDC? Do I have to get certified with PMDC? I think it's better to get a provisional certificate before you're about to match, because that could take some time. It could even take up till a couple of months, and no one else. So by a PMDC registration will allow you to get a statement of need from the Department of Health. And without a statement of need, which is a documents in mind, because you don't, it's always good.
All right, thank you. Let's moving red flags and stuff.
I think Banin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she's Banin, you can go.
So I want to talk about what do you do if you go unmatched. This is after the entire complicated process that you go through. This is the kind of email that you may receive. And it is very important to be mentally prepared for whatever may come. You cannot really foresee the future, so it's important that you know and you spend the time to be sad. On top of all the sadness that you already have, that takes a toll on you, there are going to be people who are going to enjoy the fact that you did not match, or your failure is going to help them. So some of the things that really helped me during that time was that you take that time, just like if you had matched and you would have taken the time to be happy, take the time to be sad. Let that feeling sink into you. Only then you will be able to overcome it. Obviously pray, prepare for soap, but definitely take care of yourself mentally, emotionally. Do not let those people affect you negatively. Go on. Once you have dealt with that sadness after a few weeks, that grief has settled, now is the time that you take down, now is the time that you reevaluate what really happened and what could you have done, right? So you need to think, take your scores out, take your MSP out, take your personal statement out, take all the documents that you applied in ERAS and think about what went really wrong. Was it my scores? Did I have really low scores? Did I have good scores but I still did not match? Was there a problem with my program list? Did I just apply that are not IMG friendly? Was there something wrong? Did I even get any interviews, or did I not get any interviews at all? Did I apply to multiple specialties, but did I apply to like 40, and hence there was a large number of programs that I applied to, but very small number of programs that I applied to individually? Was there something that came off really bad in my personality? Nowadays, in every program during interviews, they have a psychologist or a psychiatrist, or they have behavioral questions. And these are set to really gauge your personality, because what you are on paper, you may not be in real life. And you can, pose to be that perfect person are thrown at you. It's very easy to gauge what you are, what your personality really is. Also about contact. Some of us tend to think that a contact is short and it's going to help us. No, sometimes the contact that so your program also be the down tax in the same program. And that actually happened with one of the applicants in the program that I'm in now. And she used a lot of contacts within the program, and the program director really got agitated by that. So do not do that. Also, was there something wrong with my letter of recommendations? Best thing is that you read the letter of recommendation before it is uploaded, but sometimes the attendings do not show it to you and they upload it. And sometimes, I really haven't heard about it a lot, but sometimes there may be something in the letter of recommendation that does not work well for you. Did you have any red flags? Did you have an attempt? Was your any other red flags, which Manur is probably going to mention later. Also, research-oriented programs versus not. I noticed a lot of people talking about research in a small community program, which was very low on research. So what does that imply? So the program really thinks that, oh, you're interested in research, so this is not the program for you. And in some research-oriented programs, you do not talk about research at all, and they are really looking for research-oriented people. So that may fall off. Did you say or do something during post communication that did not work well? Then you also need to reevaluate, can you apply again? Do you have the financial support? We really need to understand that the match process is really not just about you. It is a combined effort. Definitely your parents or whoever is supporting you financially, whoever is supporting you emotionally, if you're married or not, there are a lot of factors that really involve. Also, so I've noticed this in Ziauddin, that people tend to start the USMLE journey without thinking if they really want to do it. It is the peer pressure that causes them to do it. All their friends are doing it, so hell, why not, right? But no, really, you need to understand your own capacity. You really need to understand your family values, where you see yourself, if you can be supported financially or not. It is not just about getting into US, it is about getting a residency that you are comfortable in. Also, some people are done with their house jobs and they might end up getting passing their FCPS. So if your goal is to do a residency and not just do a residency in US, then you may end up getting a residency position in Pakistan. I know this is very late to evaluate, but since you've gone through this entire emotional turmoil, now is a good time to think about it again. Do I want to do this again? Do I want to go through the stress again? It's very important. Go on. Be wary of messages and emails like this. This program director actually went into my ERAS, got my number, and messaged me a message like this. And you will think that a message is something very personal, and you may think that, hey, I've got it. But no, stay away. Go on. Now is also a good time to think, what are my other options? Not matching is not the end of the world. There are a lot of options after your M.B.B.S. You can think of applying for the next match cycle if you want to. You can do your house job once you get your match result in March, on March 13th or 15th. That is also the time when a lot of house officers from Ziauddin start to fall out, because they realize that they want to study USMLE and they're not able to do that. They get a house job elsewhere. So you can join the house job at that time if you want to, which is going to open your routes of doing an FCPS and securing a residency position in Pakistan. And then if you're done with the house job, obviously the path of PLAB in Ireland opens up. Like Manur talked about, a research position, a postdoc position, you can go for that if you want to. Pharmaceuticals are always an option, but then again, if you want to, they pay you really well. And then there are teacher's assistant positions that are available in Ziauddin and also elsewhere that you can go for. But if you do really decide to apply for the match again, and you obviously want to step up your game now, what are the things that you can do? One thing that works really well is step 3. It increases the number of interviews that you get. It also creates a good impression. If you have a low step 1 or a low step 2 CK score, a good step 3 score will boost your profile. The second thing that has never been talked about is an in-training exam. An in-training exam, I know this is a lot, and we have already taken a lot of exams and no one wants to take another exam, but hey, if you went unmatched, then you're going to do everything that is there in the world that will help you get matched, right, if you want to. So an in-training exam is basically a residence exam that takes place in the residency program every year, and it's basically to gauge if the residents are going to pass the boards. And some programs agree to the fact if a random person who has passed all the steps and has an ECFMG certificate, if you email these residency programs and you say, hey, I want to appear for the ITE, they let you do it. So I did take an in-training exam after I got my ECFMG certification, and you can take an in-training exam specifically if you target a program. So I targeted MedStar Hospital, and I went to MedStar Hospital and I asked them if I can take the in-training exam at MedStar. So what this does is, if you have done everything else, this is going to again boost your score, but I was advised not to use the in-training exam score for other interviews that I went to, because this again shows that you took the exam in such and such hospital. So you really want to be at that hospital. So I just used my in-training exam score for MedStar only. Again, observerships and externships at residency programs. I cannot stress enough on this. It's very important to do observership and externships at residency programs, especially if you target a program. Do a research project at a residency program. One of the residents who got matched at the program that I'm at applied for an externship, but the positions were full. He came up with a random idea of doing a research on those externs, and now he's in the program. Something else that you can do is a house job. Now, we always think that, it's a waste of year, but if you want to take a break, or if you do not have the finances, or if you're too damn depressed and you do not want to go through the entire math cycle again, right? Do your house job. The thing is that it's important that you continue being in the clinical work, and once you put that entire year of house job in your ERAS CV, you can definitely talk about it. You can say what you did during the past 1 year, and honestly, house job does give you an edge, because you do get to know a lot of work in a residence team that goes on. You understand a lot of things better, even if you come and do an observership after a house job. Practice your interviews well. Contact alumni, contact anyone that you may know who is here in US in the medical, in any of the hospitals. Again, an alumni or any contact may be able to get you an interview, but sometimes they cannot do anything further, right? They cannot help you get ranked. So please do not take that negatively, and do not think that people are not doing it for you. Sometimes it just cannot. Go on. Also, if you go unmatched, so what I did was I made sure that I told every program where I interviewed about the setback that I did not match, right? Because I also had to cover the fact that what did I do in 2017? I had to tell them that I was here in the US, I was applying for the match I interviewed, but I did not get matched. So that is one reason why you might have to mention the setback. The second thing is, I did notice that US medical system appreciates honesty. If you show the insight that, you know, hey, I went unmatched, and these are the things that make me feel that maybe the reason behind me not going unmatched. So it could be anything for you. You know, you may have applied to less number of places. You may have applied to wrong programs. You may have a low score. You may have no clinical experience. It may be research. So whatever you feel is was wrong with your profile, talk to them about it, and then definitely cover it up with what you did to improve, right? They are not looking for people who are crazy and they already know all the stuff. They are looking for people who can learn, right? And if you already show that on your profile, then it will help. Next slide. And then inshallah, one day you're gonna get an email like best luck.
Yay. So it tracks really well. I think some of the common red flags would be like multiple attempts in step scores, repeating a year in med school, or getting really poor grades in med school. If you're an old graduate, if you have a lot of gap years, if you go unmatched. And it's really hard when you put in so much effort in every step of the way, because when you're applying for residency in the US, you've committed to it for years and you've been working on it for years. And some things like not passing a CS exam can really derail your application. But it's important to know that this is not, you shouldn't lose hope. Just because you did not clear one exam or did poorly in one exam, or you are an old graduate, it doesn't mean that you won't match. You can strengthen your CV. You can take a holistic approach. You can strengthen in other ways. You can do research. You can do more observerships, get more clinical experience, get better letters of recommendation, work on your personal statement, work on your CV in other ways. Just because one thing is lacking, it does not mean that you will go unmatched or that you won't match into the specialty of your choice. I know a lot of people who are applying for surgery are often like, you need a score above 250, but there are people who match with 230s, and the average general surgery score in the US is 235. So if you have 230s in your step score, it does not mean that you're not going to get into surgery. And it's obviously the higher your score, the better it helps you, but it doesn't. Things that are lacking in your application can be made up for in other ways. At that time, doing research, doing your house job, getting clinical experience. In their guidelines and records say they don't take people who've had multiple attempts and steps, or they don't take people with more than 5 years from graduation. They mention these things in their program, but I think it's important, like if you're very interested in the program, especially if you know somebody who can vouch for you for that program, either email them or apply and email them and tell them you've applied and explain your red flag. Because programs make exceptions. They like people who are good hard workers, and just because you did poorly in one thing, it does not mean that you're going to be a bad resident. Residency itself is extremely difficult, and being a doctor in any country is extremely difficult, and you face setbacks constantly. So it's more about how you deal with them and how you address them than just the fact that something went wrong once. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what it's like applying during the pandemic. So first of all, this is like, we're all going through something that none of us has ever experienced before during any of our lifetimes. A program director during this time does not know what the hell's happening. Applicants don't know what's happening, and RMP doesn't know what's happening. I'm in a prelim position right now. During the first 2 months, we literally had a meeting every single day to make our schedule for the next day. So nobody knows what's going on. So just if you're confused and if you don't know what's going on, it's fine. No one on earth knows what's going on. NRMP has, as of now, not changed its math schedule, but it's probably going to change, because how are they expected for their applicants to apply if you can't take your steps? A lot of, like, for US grads, they take their step 1 and in like their second or third years, so they don't need to take CS or CK until December, so they're going to apply on time. But most of them rely on doing their sub-Is in programs they want to go to for them to match there, and sub-Is have been cancelled for everybody. So electives for you guys, sub-Is for US Med students, they've all been postponed. I think our first time students are returning to our hospital is July 6th. So everything's been pushed quite a bit. So this is an unprecedented time. Just because you're not able to go for your electives this year, I know for final years, this is a really stressful time because you planned your electives and you planned a lot of things for final year and you can't do them. It's okay. If you aren't able to take your exams because the centers aren't open and you aren't able to apply this year, no one's going to hold that against you next year because there was a pandemic and you literally had nothing. There was nothing you could do. If you've taken one of your steps or two of your steps and are planning to take step 2 CS or CK like in August or September, October when centers open up again, and if you think your application's complete in other ways, then yeah, I would recommend go ahead and applying, because I think if this is the year that everybody will be more understanding. And I know that people who are in Pakistan, because there's a travel ban and we don't know when traveling would be allowed, a lot of programs are planning to do virtual interviews. Nobody's really decided what's going on yet. Like from our program, we haven't made a decision. All our fellowship interviews are happening virtually, but we haven't made a decision for residency because it's still a couple of months away and we're still hoping something gets better. So we don't know what's going to happen yet, but there's a high chance that there'll be virtual interviews, which is going to be an advantage for people who are not in the country or people who it'll help you save a lot of money. And obviously, like, virtual interviews are not ideal because you can't see the program yourself. You won't be able to see, a lot of it is based on your feel for the program and a program's feel for you. So those things would be lacking, but these are unprecedented times. And if you think that because of COVID right now, you can't apply this year and you would rather just wait till next year to apply, I think that's completely understandable. There are a lot of things you can do in the meantime to build your CV, build your application, or I mean, just the fact that you can't travel to the US right now. And I think for final years, you can't get US clinical experience in the US. If it's possible, if you go to the next slide. So what are the things that you can do in the meantime? If you're in the US, you can definitely reach out to people and do research projects. I don't think anybody's going to be taking anybody for externships or observerships or clinical experience right now because they don't want people coming into the hospital. But you can start working remotely on research projects. And you can do that from Pakistan too, especially if you worked with somebody, if you went for electives in your second or third year, or you know somebody personally, you can get in touch with them and tell them that you're in another country, but a lot of the work is happening remotely, so you can get in on at some level. You can also work with people in Pakistan. They're publishing anything that has the word COVID-19 or coronavirus in it like every minute. So get in on some research projects within Pakistan or come up with something amongst your peers and start something on your own. If you haven't taken your steps, this is a great opportunity to just buckle down and start studying and take your exams as soon as the centers open up. There are a lot of organizations that are getting involved with treating COVID patients in Pakistan. You could get involved with them. You could do volunteer work, just like the groups that are collecting money for rations for people who can't afford it and stuff like that. Volunteer work in the end counts a lot, and you're going to be helping somebody in need. So there's a lot of things you can do in Pakistan at this point, if considering the fact that we're all stuck and we really can't do anything else. And I think programs are also going to be more understanding if you weren't able to get US clinical experience right now because their own med students weren't able to do sub-Is this year. So if you apply without US clinical experience, this is the time when you can easily explain it away that like you had something set up or you were planning to, but you couldn't because you were there was a pandemic. So we're going to do questions now. Leena,
all right. Yeah, so Fatma's going to be running through the questions. We'll try and answer as many as we can, and anything that we've missed. All the alumni over here are on the group, so they can just directly reply to your comments. A little bit longer than we'd anticipated. And other than that, this is also like recorded, so you guys can go back and watch this later as well. Fatma, if you want to, you can close the presentation now. Fatma?
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. Just like general, if anything too specific, then the alumni can just directly respond to those people.
Okay. So far, some people have already sent in questions. We can address those first, and then if there are any new questions, we can like deal with those as well. Okay.
And sorry, just wanted to add, if all of you could just raise your hand so I can just kind of keep track of who wants to answer. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so the first question is it wise to rank a high-ranking prelim university program over a categorical community program if you're interested in research or academia? Very complicated question.
Okay, Mahanur.
So considering I've done a prelim year and I've been to the math cycle twice, I think I can address this part. I think for a lot of people, especially those going into surgery, it's very common for us to interview at prelim and categoricals, and you definitely get more prelim interviews than categorical interviews. And if you've done a postdoc, like for my story is that I did an elective at Yale, which wasn't in surgery, but that was when I met my mentor in cardiac surgery, and kind of told him that I'm going to take my steps, finish med school, and come back and do research with you. So when it was time, I reached out to him and we set something up, and I came back and did my postdoc here. So when I was applying, I interviewed at around like 8 places for surgery, and 6 of those were prelim the first time. And of those, Yale was my top choice because I've already been here for a year. It's a great program and it's an academic institution. But I had 2 categorical interviews and I ranked them higher than the prelim because as an international medical graduate, it's just hard to get into certain specialties. And there's no guarantee that doing a prelim at a good institution will mean that you'll match at that institution. There's no guarantee that you doing a prelim at a big academic hospital means that you will get into an academic position next year. So I think apply widely, go with what your gut says. If you were absolutely hell-bent on not going to a community program, fine. But there's so many people like my mentors at Yale who are attendings now who did their residency at community hospitals, then did their fellowship at larger academic hospitals, and now are attendings at academic centers. So being in a community hospital does not mean that you will not have an academic career. It's just a stepping stone to get to where you eventually need to get. And if you can get straight away into an academic hospital, that's great. But for people like this year when I was applying, all my fellow prelims are also applying, and most of the interviews that they had, or a lot of the interviews that I had, were in small community hospitals. I had about half my interviews were academic hospitals and half of them were community hospitals. And I ranked the academic ones higher, obviously, because that's what my goal is. But it doesn't mean that being in an academic center in your prelim year doesn't guarantee you being in an academic center later on. And your goal is to be a board certified in whatever field it is. So for me, my goal is to be a board certified surgeon, and I need to get my foot in the door, and I need to complete my residency. And if I wasn't going to match, I ranked the community hospitals as well. So if I was going to match there, I would have done my best there and then applied to an academic center for fellowship. So I think it's definitely better to rank your categorical programs higher than your prelim programs, because that's your goal. Your goal is to be board certified. And you don't want to take the risk because applying during intern year is extremely hard. You're going through the hardest year of your life, and then you're applying for the match on top of that and traveling. So all of these things are things that you need to take into consideration.
Thank you, Dr. Manu. Okay, so our next question is, it's for Dr. Hareen. Someone wanted to know about your experience, about how you matched in psychiatry.
Okay, yeah. So for psychiatry, the main thing is that for most of the psychiatry programs, they do want to see that you're genuinely interested in it. They don't want to, because the fact is that psychiatry has a reputation that most people think of it as kind of like a backup, and it'll be easy to get in terms of psychiatrists. And they really want to see that you're consistently interested in it, that you have enough experience in it. In my experience, I Ziauddin doesn't really focus much on psychiatry, and there's very little experience that you can get as far as my time was. So majority of my experience came up very much is that you're dealing with, you're able to understand like the difference between other specialties and psychiatry. The questions that you also get during psychiatry interviews are a little different. They're a lot more, I guess, behavioral oriented. And they kind of, I feel like, because I gave both internal medicine as well as psychiatry interviews, and there is a difference because they do want to see more of the kind of questions that they ask you. They're mostly just going after your personality more than in other in like the IM interviews. So I'd say that you just have to make sure that if you're really interested in psychiatry, you get the experience as much as possible. I do recommend going for externships, especially in externships. If you're doing it at any program, they do usually give the externs an upper hand. They may even offer you an interview at their hospital, so that shows that they do give a little bit of preference. So that definitely helps out a lot.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next question is, when is a good time to start contacting programs to request interviews?
So I think
Aleena,
contact
are you gonna?
as soon as you apply. Start in October. Email them once a month. I know people who email them every week. I know people who email them every other week. I did not do any of that because I was also an intern, so it was hard to keep up with that, but it definitely helps. I know people who sent out emails every other week to program coordinators and ended up getting next 4 more interviews that way. So be aggressive, email them. It does affect his opinion of them, and it's a higher chance he'll call them for interviews.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question is it better to do electives at a single hospital and get LORs, or is it good to go to different places? Does anyone raise their hand?
Sorry, Manur Bakai and Benin wanted to answer the same question as before.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No, I wanted to talk about the previous question.
Yeah, the previous question. Sorry, I was muted too. I didn't realize. So, yeah. Just go ahead.
What was the question?
The one Manur answered?
Yeah.
Okay. It was about when is it a good time to start contacting programs to request interviews?
Yeah, so what I did was I emailed, because I targeted the East Coast specifically. What I did was I emailed a lot of programs beforehand that I'm interested in their program, even before the match cycle started, right? And another smart thing to do is that you download a tracker on your emails. I think a lot of people don't do that, but it will help you realize who is really reading your email, the program director, and they're not really looking into it. So instead of emailing the same people again and again and again, people who read your emails, send them email again.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that because I applied to a limited number of programs, I did call a lot of programs and mostly program coordinators. So when you've already applied, what you can do is you can start getting in touch with the program coordinators, because at that time, some people who might have scheduled their interviews might cancel at the last moment. And so they might schedule you in. However, you need to sort of go through their filter before they consider you for an interview. For instance, they might call you for an interview the very next day, but they will only do that if you have, like, let's say, a certain score or a certain number of months of US clinical experience. So definitely call program coordinators.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to answer this question?
Yeah, Manur Bakai is going to answer.
Yeah, so like I wanted to add 2 things. So previously the question was answered about ranking a prelim program over a categorical. So I'm sorry, I just didn't address it right away. some bigger programs that I interviewed at with prelim positions, two of them actually told me that they will not just they don't usually keep their prelims just for 1 year. They keep them for 2 years. And then they also find a placement for them in third year. And a lot of them have like 100% match rate for prelims as well. So you do not have to go through the math cycle. So it really is very, very program specific. And based on those specific, I ended up ranking my program prelim higher than my categorical because of this reason. And as opposed to other prelim positions in which they're just basically keeping you for a year and then you have to reapply. So the question is also like depends on the programs that you're interviewing at. So it's not across the board as well. And also, I mean, it is a risk, there's an inherent risk in every prelim position, but it's also program specific. The second question was about communication with the program director. So like I did send out emails and 2 of the times I got told off. I got an email back saying that we do not appreciate any communication that's outside of ERAS, do not email us. So after that, I was a little apprehensive. So it really depends. Some people are saying that they've gotten an interview. So I was trying to follow suit, but I also got a negative and did not end up getting an interview from that program. So I don't know, maybe it's a good idea to get in touch with a few people if you know anyone there to figure out if that program does encourage any communication outside of ERAS or if they're receptive towards it or not. I think going after programs that have historically given interviews to people who have emailed them would be a good way to go about it.
Thank you. Manur, Imran, do you want to?
One more thing about the prelim, like Manur said, a lot of the large university hospitals have 2 years of prelim. So where I'm at right now, we also have 2 years of prelim. Some of them are very particular. They say that they highly discourage you from applying for the match again. They want you to do 2 years of prelim and then they'll find you a third year or second year spot outside the match. And it's very important for you to have your program director support if you are applying for the match again, because they're the ones who are going to be writing your letters, making your calls, and basically anything you did before your institutions in the US have a very short-term memory. They remember where you were. The second time I was applying, everybody asked me about my intern year. Nobody was asking me about what I did in med school, what I did after med school. I mean, there was a few mentions here and there, but like the most focus was what I was doing in the last year. So if the main thing that you've been doing in your last year is your intern year and your program directors didn't write you a letter or didn't call this program and tell them, like, you know, didn't vouch for you, then you're not going to match. So you need your program support. So when you're looking for prelim positions, you should speak to other prelims within that position and base your rank list based on that. A lot of programs say they have 100% match rate after the 2 years of prelim, and big institutions almost always get their people somewhere, but it's not always in surgery. So they say they have 100% match rate, but these people, I mean, it's not necessarily because they didn't get a position. Some people just change their minds after doing 2 years of surgery and they're like, this is not for me. But from my program, people went into like anesthesiology or radiology, but they still switched specialties. So there was 100% match rate, but not necessarily in surgery. And I know a lot of other programs are similar. So these are just things like it's very program specific. You need to talk to other prelims in that program. And when you go for interviews, that's the time, or you can reach out to people after. And then with reaching out to programs, I think the day I applied for them, this was like the last year when I applied for internal medicine and gen search because I wanted a backup, but I didn't end up ranking medicine. So the day I matched, I emailed every single alumni from that database, and almost everybody got back to me, and I got interviews at half those places. So your alumni are helpful. They will not everybody will get back to you. Some people are busy. Some people don't see their emails, but it's a really good idea to reach out to your alumni the day you apply. Let them know you're in the cycle. Don't wait till like December when they've already made their recommendations and all the interviews have been sent out for that program.
Yes. So the thing is, interviews are sent out on rolling basis. The first wave of interviews are sent out by the end of September. Then you have a wave of interview in around end of October and November, and the last bit of interviews come out in January. These are basically the cancellation interviews. The emails that you send out are basically to get hold of these cancellation interviews. And what I would recommend is either you should email early in the season, or you should email at the end. That way you can get hold of those spots that are applicants won't fill out with their interview. A lot of American medical graduates have more than 20 interviews and they cancel out on the remaining interviews. and that is the spot that you should be targeting with these emails. That is something that you should consider when you email, but keep in mind you won't receive a lot of replies from these emails. If you email, let's say 100 programs, you will only receive replies from about 5, 6 maximum. That's what I got. Yeah, that's something that you should definitely consider.
Anam? So about emailing programs and calling them, it's a double-edged sword because, you know, you're technically not supposed to contact them outside of ERAS. But I know someone who actually wrote handwritten letters to program directors and actually went and dropped their CVs, and it did actually help them to secure a couple of interviews. So this is something that you should always be careful about. And also your address on your application matters a lot. So I've usually noticed that whatever you put on your application, that's where you get most of your interviews from. So if you're emailing someone, maybe you should tell them that I reside in this area, or my family's in this area, and that's the reason I would be more interested in your program. So yeah, that's about it.
Okay, so I'm just repeating the last question again. Is it better to do electives at a single place and get LORs, or is it good to go to a different place?
Zainab?
I think Dr. Talha is.
Yeah.
I would suggest you go to multiple places, because when I was doing my second elective back at Cook County, although I did work with 2 different attendings and they were both very good in their field and they both wanted to write me a letter, they said we can only write you one. So that's why I went to different hospitals and then did more electives. So I'm not sure if it's the same rule at every single institution, but for most of them, they'll just give you one LOR per institute, and then going to a different program, that increases your match probability as well. There are more residency programs you are focusing at, and there are more people who are going to vouch for you. So if you can, do it at different programs.
Okay, thank you.
Who's talking?
Farzam.
Okay, yeah, no. So I lowered my hand because I wanted to say the same thing as Zainab.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So again, it comes down to the fact that don't just do electives or externships or observerships for the fact that you want a letter of recommendation. Going to different places and doing electives at different places is going to increase the number of contacts. It's going to increase the number of places that you might end up matching. So I would recommend that go do electives at different places.
Talha, did you want to add something?
Yes, always target big university programs. Like I said, designation of the letter matters a lot. So always target big university letter of recommendations.
All right. Fatima, next question.
Okay, so how to go about the step 1 pass-fail in the future, and how can that impact the process? Yeah, and how will that impact the process?
I think everyone did address that in the beginning. Just, you want to go over it again?
No, I don't. They don't want to. Okay, we can just go on.
I'll just Abbas.
So for the pass-fail, I think it's being implemented in 2022. So for those guys who are going to be applying after 2022, I think you just need to focus more on your step 2 CK rather than your step 1. In fact, I would suggest getting done with your step 1 as fast as you can. Just do first aid and get it done. That's basically, because it doesn't matter what score you get once this is implemented. Focus on your CK and focus on your electives and research and other things rather than the step 1 score. That's the only advice I would give. So that's it.
Yeah, so I understand where Abbas is coming from, but I look at it slightly differently. The only way to get a good score on your CK is to study your ass off for step 1. I don't think doing really well on CK is possible if you barely passed step 1, and now you won't know if you barely passed because it's pass-fail. So yeah, maybe you don't need to be extremely obsessed with killing it for step one, but maybe just first aid and UWorld might not cut it, because I mean, anything and everything that you need for CK, your knowledge base comes from step one. So I mean, you can save up time for step one, but then you just be all that time for CK, because you. So that's just what I think about it.
There.
Yeah, this is negatively going to affect IMG's career. In the beginning, you had step one CK and CS and step three to prove yourself. Now you have one less attempt for that. But I think there are still ways to distinguish yourself. It's not the end of the road. And like I just want to echo what Farzam said. I think definitely you should put in more effort into CK. And I think people underestimate the importance of step one when it comes to CK preparation itself. I think 60 to 70% of the core knowledge applied in CK is step one. Also, I know it's late, so I just want to thank Fatima and Aleena for organizing and hosting us today. If I don't get a chance to talk later on, and Manor for preparing the slides, and everyone else who's contributed and spoken as well. So just thank you.
All right.
Also, in my experience,
Madina?
step two CK content, the overlap between step one and step two CK content, in my case at least, was only about 5%. And I don't think you need a lot of time to prepare for CK. And I do think that the overlap that you see is mostly between step two CK and step three, not between step one and step two CK. And also, even if you got a bad score in step one, you have an opportunity to greatly improve your score in CK. I've seen a lot of people who don't have like amazing step one scores but have over the roof step two CK scores. And
you can answer in the comments. Something super important.
Somebody just asked about the couple match. Does Farzam
I
want to
think
talk
Farzam
about
said he'll answer them directly, and he can write in the. Is that okay, Farzam?
Is that okay? He's
You can unmute yourself.
Whoever wrote that in the comments, I responded to them directly there. That just get in touch with me, and I'll be able to tell you more about it. All in all, if anyone wants to know, it's good. It helps you match at better places. It does that option which people think that, oh, either you both match or you both go unmatched or one person goes matched. It doesn't work like that. As long as you're, I would say, as long as your priority is your academics and not just staying together, it won't affect you. Yeah, if you going into the couples together, any more details, I can just respond to people privately.
Thank you. We got a question about how much weightage does having done your residency in Pakistan have? Does anyone want to answer that? I don't think anyone did their residency in Pakistan.
Yeah, so I don't have personal experience with this, but I do know people in my program who did residency in their home country, and when they were called in for the interview, they did not consider for instance, obviously if you've done your residency, it's been quite a while since you graduated, but they don't count that period of time as a gap. That they counted as clinical experience. You can take it positively, some can take it negatively, but most programs will take it positively.
Yeah, same point. Most of the programs take it as a clinical experience, and they do appreciate it, and they still do consider you, provided the fact that you're a very old graduate, but you do have a residency, which means that you did practice. One of the people from Ziauddin who got matched this year is an old grad, but she had a dermatology residency back from Pakistan, and she got matched this year. So you know, it does turn out good for you.
Omer?
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard-headed to be and practical about these things, and always keep your options open. So I think, yeah, if you want to do your house job, you can. But if I had the choice of doing my house job and focusing in on USMLE prep again, I think I would just focus on the USMLE prep, get it done with. Because I think it doesn't have as much weightage as doing your steps, doing other US clinical experience does. So I think it's always like good to be very focused in on just doing that one thing. But also I went to some programs, so-called pre-match programs where I interviewed at, and for them it seemed like it was almost a priority for you to have done your house job. So I mean, I guess it just depends on the program.
Yeah. Is that good?
Yeah, I think we're done with a major chunk of the question.
Okay. And anything else? Sorry we couldn't get through all the questions. You can just, everyone should be able to answer them later tonight at some point. Any closing stuff anyone wants to say?
Thanks for arranging this, guys.
That's okay. Thank you for taking the time out to do this, honestly. All right, so, okay. I think we can wrap it up now. I really want to say thank you to Fatma. Honestly, she's the one who majorly put this together and got all of you together. So thank you for that. Student Affairs and all the class reps that got all the students in and kind of got the word out. So thank you to them. A huge thank you to the Ziauddin alumni group and Dr. Fahim for doing this. He's been great and hosting all of this. So it's really nice to have that support from the alumni group. Thank you. And yeah, hopefully we'll all see each other in the future. So, all right.
And thanks, Aleena.
No problem. It's okay.